The three unholy knights materialized before Asher, one wreathed in shadow, one glowing with pale ethereal light, and the last pulsating with crimson energy. Each embodied a fragment of the original knight's power, yet none were diminished.
They were whole. Terrifying. Absolute.
Asher extended his hand, eyes calm but resolute. Infinite fusion. The three figures began to merge, their energies spiraling violently. Darkness clashed with light, blood-red power churned and twisted between them, and then, stillness. From the storm emerged a singular figure, the unholy knight reborn. Its armor gleamed a pristine white, regal and flawless, yet the shadows wreathing its frame whispered corruption. Its cape fluttered like a banner of purity, but its presence chilled the air like death itself.
The knight knelt, head bowed. "My lord."
Asher nodded, unbothered.
"Rise.
Wait in the shadows. I'll call when needed." In a blink, the knight vanished, gone without sound, yet his aura lingered like a promise of destruction. Asher checked the status panel of his Soul Reaper Monarch ability.
3 down. 2 to go. Humph.
I could get addicted to this, he muttered, brushing dust from his coat. With that, he turned toward the spiraling staircase at the edge of the testing grounds and stepped out into the tower's hub. The central plaza buzzed with life, adventurers bartering with merchants, healers tending to the injured, and challengers preparing for their next climb. But something shifted the moment Asher emerged. People were staring. Asher slowed, feeling eyes trail him with every step, some in awe, some in fear, others in thinly veiled envy.
He glanced down. No blood.
No glowing sigils.
Aura sealed tight. Then why?
A murmur to his left caught his attention. He turned toward a glowing screen suspended above the plaza.
A leaderboard.
At the top, his name blazed in golden light. Asher Magnus, floor 10 solo clear, sword aura only. Below it, dozens of accolades, timestamps, and rewards trailed his record like a crown of glory.
Well damn, Asher sighed.
I didn't think it'd go public. And then, another screen flickered to life beside it.
A special leaderboard.
Hidden trials initiate, Asher Magnus.
That was new. Before he could process it, his holowatch buzzed.
A single notification blinked on the screen. Summoned, Director Yulia, Academy Command Office. Inside the towering obsidian spire of the Academy's command hall, Director Yulia sat poised behind a crystal desk, her fingers steepled. Her gaze locked onto Asher as he entered. The screen behind her displayed the new leaderboard.
She didn't offer pleasantries. The tower is ancient, she said. Unpredictable.
But there's no record of such a system-generated board. Not even in archived logs.
Asher didn't speak.
She gestured to the leaderboard.
Explain.
He exhaled slowly. No use lying. Yulia had a skill that cut through deception like a scalpel. I was refining my sword aura, he said simply.
So I cleared floor 10's boss. Solo.
No skills, no summons, just swordsmanship.
And
after the clear, I received a notification. Said I unlocked a hidden trial. Rewarded me for completing it with a single ability. Yulia's eyes narrowed. What was the reward? A sword aura ascension potion, Asher replied, raising his hand to show the faint silver glow dancing along his fingers. I used it right away.
Hence the new aura. A long pause. Then.
You're lying.
Asher blinked. Excuse me.
You're withholding information, Yulia said coolly.
Don't insult me, Asher.
You know what this could mean, for the Academy, for the tower itself. Asher smirked, leaning back in the chair. Even if I told you everything, no one could replicate it. Hidden trials don't come with instructions.
Yulia's lips thinned.
Your recklessness can spark chaos.
Or inspiration, he countered.
If someone does manage to do what I did, maybe they deserve it. Spoken like a true menace. Spoken like someone tired of limits. Another silence passed between them like a taut wire. Finally, Yulia stood and turned off the leaderboard display. Your results are exceptional. But you tread a dangerous path, Asher Magnus. He stood and offered a half-hearted salute. Wouldn't be the first time I've been told that.
Know this, she said.
I'll be watching you more closely than ever. Your rise might not go unchallenged for long. He met her eyes and smiled.
Good.
I'd hate to get bored. As Asher walked down the marble corridor and back toward the chaos of the tower, he glanced down at the silver aura weaving between his fingers. Next time, he muttered under his breath, I'll give them something real to fear. And the shadows behind him stirred, ready. Asher stepped out of Director Yulia's office only to be met by a wall of hushed whispers. A crowd had gathered, students loitering near the corridor, eyes wide, voices low. At the center stood a tall figure with long electric blue hair that shimmered under the artificial lights. His presence alone drew focus like gravity. Magnus, the figure called, voice calm, laced with a razor-sharp edge. Who'd you bribe this time to climb that high? Asher stopped, brow raised. Still bitter I passed you up, Oris?
Oris Lyron.
The prodigy of the light-born family. Heir to a legacy of revered healers, yet cursed or blessed, with a different kind of power. His vidlight didn't mend bones or close wounds like his kin's. No, Oris burned through flesh and soul alike.
A predator among priests.
He stepped forward, his piercing azure eyes locked on Asher. No one just appears at the top of the special rankings. Especially not you. What did you do? Still figuring that out myself, Asher said, slipping his hands into his coat pockets. Apparently, talent is harder to fake than you'd think.
Cute. Oris smirked.
You always did have a mouth on you. And you've always had a stick up your. A few chuckles from the crowd interrupted them. Even Oris grinned, albeit thinly. Careful, Magnus. You're attracting attention, Oris said, his tone suddenly grave. Not all of it friendly.
Asher shrugged.
If someone's watching, let them. I'm not hiding. You should, Oris replied, stepping aside. The higher you climb, the more people want to see you fall. Asher gave a lopsided grin. Then they'll just have to climb after me. Oris didn't answer. He turned to walk away, but tossed one last comment over his shoulder. Even the brightest flame burns out fast. And yet, Asher said, his voice carrying effortlessly, those are the ones they remember. Oris chuckled as he vanished into the crowd. The students dispersed, the weight of the moment fading, until a familiar voice cut through the tension.
Hey, troublemaker.
Asher turned, smile tugging at his lips.
Freya.
Freya strode toward him, her crimson hair catching the light like fire, green eyes sharp with barely contained amusement. She stopped in front of him, arms crossed, expression somewhere between fondness and frustration.
Seriously, she said.
Can you do anything without turning the entire academy upside down? He gave a mock-innocent shrug.
I just climbed a tower.
Quietly, I might add. You accidentally climbed to the top of the special leaderboard, soloed a floor boss using only sword aura, and you're calling that quiet?
Didn't tell anyone, did I?
She sighed, rolling her eyes. Honestly, I should start charging for every time I have to clean up after your mess.
Asher grinned. You love it.
No, I tolerate it, she said, though the corners of her mouth betrayed a smile. Seriously though, you okay? You look like you've been through hell.
He gave a nod. Still processing.
Freya took a step closer. Everyone saying you ticked every box, sword aura mastery, no artifacts, no backup. Just raw skill. Is it true? Some of it, Asher admitted. I didn't use anything but my sword. But there are other students who could have done the same. I'm not special.
Not special.
Freya raised a brow. You're a battle mage, Asher. You reached floor 200 relying solely on aura and swordplay. That's beyond rare, it's borderline insane. Asher scratched the back of his head. Wasn't aiming to make a scene. Just wanted to push myself. And that, she said with a soft smile, is what makes you infuriating. You don't even realize how far ahead you are. He offered a half smile. If I start listing my titles, should I add infuriating to the top? I swear, Freya muttered with a laugh.
Come on.
Let's get you some food before you collapse. I bet you haven't eaten in hours. Maybe days, he replied, falling in step beside her. They walked through the academy courtyard, past fountains and glimmering archways, under the ever-watching eyes of enchanted lamps and spellbound security glyphs. Whispers followed them, students murmuring, pointing, wondering. I wonder how long this buzz will last, Asher muttered, keeping his gaze ahead. Freya walked beside him like a storm wrapped in velvet, confident and composed.
A few days, maybe.
But some of them? They're already planning to chase your footsteps. Let me guess, swordsman, he said dryly.
Freya nodded.
Now that people know raw focus and minimalism earn greater rewards, everyone wants to be the next Asher Magnus. He gave a tired laugh. Good luck to them. Freya glanced sideways at him. You really don't like the attention, do you?
No, he said honestly.
I didn't climb to be remembered. I climbed because I had to.
She didn't press further.
She simply reached out and gently bumped his shoulder with hers. Then let's make sure you're not climbing alone next time. Asher looked at her, a real smile cracking through.
Deal.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Probably a lot of swordsmen, she added thoughtfully. Now that word's out that climbing with just a single weapon seems to yield better rewards, they're going to flock to it. Asher nodded, his expression calm, though his thoughts were more amused.
Let them try, he thought to himself.
They won't find the soul ascension potion or anything remotely similar. That was a one-time reward for the first to clear the challenge. Still, he kept those thoughts to himself, offering only a small, nonchalant smile as they continued walking. I hope they do, he said aloud, his tone light and unbothered. Freya glanced at him, her green eyes sharp with curiosity, but she didn't press. Instead, the two made their way toward the academy cafeteria, where the usual chatter and clatter of student life would hopefully drown out the endless talk about leaderboards and towers. Over the next few months, as Freya had predicted, new names began to climb the leaderboard in the World Academy's tower rankings. Despite the surge of challengers, Asher remained unmatched at the top, having cleared up to the 200th floor. Most others faltered around the 100th floor, leading to speculation among students and faculty alike about whether Asher was truly playing fair or if he had some hidden knowledge about auras or other advanced techniques. Adding to the buzz, a new resource became the talk of the academy: ascension potions. These potions were discovered within the tower and came in many varieties: magic ascension, sword aura, spear aura, bow aura, summoner magic aura, and more. Their existence not only enhanced the reputation of the academy but also brought worldwide attention. Scholars began to refer to the potions as one of the most revolutionary finds in recent history, and Asher, who had first discovered them, gained even greater fame. Your journey continues at my virtual library empire. Asher's contributions earned him more merit points within his family, solidifying his standing as a prodigy. Meanwhile, the academy saw an influx of new students, drawn by the lure of the ascension potions. Alchemists, magic crafters, and researchers from across the world flocked to academy, from other continents too, desperate to study these potions and unlock their secrets. Although they made some progress, replicating the potion's effects remained elusive. Still, there was a growing belief that the recipe would one day spark a new era of magical and technological advancement. The phenomenon didn't just affect the academy, it reshaped global dynamics. Students from other prestigious academies, including those for elves, beastkin, and other races, who had sought refuge on Volarisa after their own worlds were ravaged, now began enrolling at the World Academy. They hoped to benefit from the ascension potions and the unique opportunities they provided. The academy, once again, became the focal point of the world's attention, its reputation as a haven of innovation and power cemented. Asher, whether he liked it or not, stood at the center of this storm. The academy thrived under its newfound spotlight, but the constant attention on Asher was both a blessing and a burden. His every move was scrutinized, and rumors about his abilities and secrets spread like wildfire. Whispers about how he might have discovered the ascension potions in the tower added an air of mystery to his name. Some students idolized him, while others grew envious, believing his achievements were unattainable. Asher, however, maintained his focus. He spent his days alternating between intense training and careful research. The influx of new resources into the academy provided opportunities to strengthen himself further, but it also introduced new challenges. Rivalries brewed as students from other races brought their unique abilities, pushing the competition to greater heights. Freya, always at his side, observed the shifts in the academy dynamics with a mix of amusement and concern. You know, it's only a matter of time before someone tries to challenge you publicly, she said one day as they walked through the bustling campus. Let them, Asher replied calmly, his eyes scanning the leaderboards displayed on a massive holoscreen in the courtyard. They'll either prove themselves worthy or learn the gap they need to close.
Freya smirked. Ever the confident one, aren't you?
But I think you might actually enjoy the competition.
Asher shrugged.
The competition is inevitable. If it pushes everyone to grow, then it's a good thing. But they should know, this isn't about just reaching the top. It's about staying there. The directors also saw the brewing tension as they gathered for another meeting. The directors convened for another meeting, the atmosphere heavy with brewing tension. In just a decade, we've had 2 such meetings. We should have dismissed Magnus when we had the chance, grumbled an old man, his voice filled with irritation. Another director sneered. You're just bitter that your grandson couldn't measure up, even as a supposed prodigy in swordsmanship. The old man bristled as another chimed in mockingly, not even close. Your grandson couldn't even reach Asher's rankings despite all the praise about being a sword prodigy. He's not even in the same league as Magnus, added another, shaking their head.
Prodigy? Someone scoffed.
He's just relying on the family's sword saint ability. That's like giving a kid a gunmaster's skill and calling them a prodigy in marksmanship. Hearing the laughter ripple through the room, the old man clenched his fists under the table, fighting the urge to lash out. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he finally said through gritted teeth, "Fine. Let's just move on." The others exchanged knowing smirks but refrained from pressing the matter further. The discussion shifted to more pressing academy matters, leaving the old man simmering in silence, his pride bruised. "We need to address the constant fights," said Shirley, the beautiful blonde director of the healing department, her tone firm yet exasperated. "My medical facilities have been overwhelmed by injured students every day." "How about implementing a challenge system?" suggested Myra, the director of security, her sharp eyes scanning the room. "That could work," agreed Arnold, the head of the artifacts department, nodding thoughtfully. Reynold, the head of dungeon affairs, chimed in with a hint of enthusiasm. "Then let's move forward with it. Not only will it help students rise in power, but the fights will be regulated, measured, and far safer as well." One day, a formal announcement echoed throughout the academy grounds. The director, Yulia, stood on a floating platform in the central plaza, her voice amplified magically. "Students, faculty, and honored guests," she began, her tone authoritative, "to celebrate the advancements brought forth by the Ascension Potions and the unyielding spirit of growth, the Academy will hold an unprecedented event, a summit challenge." The announcement stirred the crowd into murmurs. Yulia continued, "This challenge is open to all students, regardless of rank or year. Competitors will face trials crafted by the tower itself, pushing them beyond their limits. The rewards will be monumental. And for those who aspire to face our top-ranked student, Asher Magnus, this is your chance." Freya glanced at Asher, who stood motionless, his gaze unwavering.
"Guess you're the main event," she teased.
"Inevitable," Asher replied, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "But this will be interesting. Let's see who has the guts to step up." "Challengers can only challenge someone up to 5 ranks above them," Yulia explained, her authoritative tone cutting through the chatter. "The one who has been challenged can reject a challenge up to 3 times a day but must accept at least 1 challenge every week. After fulfilling this weekly obligation, they may reject further challenges." She glanced at Asher, who winked back at her.
"Really?
"Flirting here of all places," Freya said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "She started it," Asher shrugged nonchalantly, causing Freya to shake her head in disbelief. "Read exclusive content at my virtual library empire." Yulia continued, unfazed. "Additionally, every month, those ranked in the top 10 positions will earn Academy points." A wave of excitement rippled through the students. Academy points were highly coveted, especially since the Academy had begun harvesting the Ascension Potions from the tower. These potions were now available for purchase in the Academy shop, but only with Academy points. "What about class rankings?" a student asked, raising their hand. "The class rankings and their challenge systems remain unchanged," Yulia replied, earning a nod of understanding from the student. "How many Academy points do we get for rankings?" asked a graceful elven beauty, her voice drawing attention as several male students glanced her way. She dismissed their gawking with a look of disdain, her aura sharp as a blade. "The first rank receives 100 Academy points," Yulia said. "Each subsequent rank gets 10 points less than the one above them." She added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "Also, during a duel, the winner will take all the Academy points that the loser has. So, I suggest you think carefully before issuing or accepting challenges." The tension in the room thickened as the students digested this new rule, their competitive spirits igniting. Some were already sizing each other up, mentally preparing for their first challenge. 2 students must first inform the teachers in charge, only then can they fight in the arena, Yulia concluded, looking over the crowd. "You can all go now," she added. The students began to disperse, but many were still eyeing each other, assessing potential rivals. As Asher and Freya made their way out, Asher couldn't help but notice the stares directed his way, not just from humans but from students of other races as well. Just as they were about to leave, an elven beauty stepped forward, stopping them. She was tall and elegant, her flowing silver hair shimmering under the academy lights. Her piercing blue eyes locked onto Asher, and the way her S-class uniform fit her only added to her commanding presence. "You are Asher Magnus?" she asked, her voice cold and measured. "I am," Asher replied calmly, tilting his head slightly. "And you are?" Before she could answer, another elven girl interjected, her voice sharp. How can you not know Lady Tiara? Tiara raised a hand to silence her companion. Enough, she said firmly before returning her gaze to Asher.
I am Tiara.
I was ranked first among the new students. It seems you don't pay much attention to the Academy's rankings, she remarked.
Asher shrugged.
What others do has little to do with me. Tiara's eyes narrowed slightly at his nonchalant response. I am here to issue a challenge, she said, stepping closer. I want to see just how strong the so-called top-ranked S-class student really is. Freya frowned at Tiara's tone but remained silent, watching the exchange carefully. All right, let's fight, Asher said, his interest piqued. He had heard she was the top new student, and now he was curious about her strength. At least you're not a coward, Tiara said, her voice steady as she added, let's register the challenge then. As she started to step forward, he stopped. Not so fast, he said, a small smirk on his face. What do I gain from this? He asked. I mean, you're aiming for the S-class rank 1, but what do I get out of it? Tiara narrowed her eyes at him, clearly not expecting the question. I will give you an elven magic skill, she offered.
Asher shook his head.
I don't need that. Then what do you want? She asked, a hint of frustration creeping into her tone. Access to your continent's dungeon, he said plainly. Her eyes widened for a moment before she frowned. I can't grant that, she replied firmly. Then I reject your challenge, he said, turning as if to walk away. Great way to dodge a challenge without painting yourself as a coward, Tiara called out mockingly, her sharp tone cutting through the air. Asher turned his head slightly, his expression calm but his eyes gleaming with amusement. If you ever decide to make it worth my while, let me know, he said before walking off, leaving Tiara standing there with a fiery determination burning in her eyes. This bastard, Tiara mumbled under her breath, her frustration simmering. In her academy, she had been the top-ranked student for the last 10 years, a position she had earned through relentless effort and natural talent. It was a title she carried with pride, much like Asher Magnus, who had dominated his own academy's rankings for nearly as long. But now, her elders had sent her here, away from her familiar grounds, to chase what they called a shortcut training method in the form of the ascension potions. Tiara had no choice but to comply, though the very idea of taking shortcuts grated against her disciplined nature. And now, to top it off, this Asher Magnus had rejected her challenge outright, as if her efforts, her rank, and even her presence meant nothing to him. And now, to top it off, this Asher Magnus had rejected her challenge outright, as if her efforts, her rank, and even her presence meant nothing to him. The rejection stung more than she was willing to admit. How dare he, she muttered, her fists clenching. Her blue eyes flashed with resolve as she turned and strode away, already plotting her next move. If Asher Magnus thought he could brush her off so easily, he was in for a rude awakening. In the weeks leading up to the event, the academy was alive with activity. Students trained harder than ever, forming alliances and strategizing to make it through the grueling trials. The Summit Challenge wasn't just a test of strength, it was a comprehensive evaluation of skill, intelligence, and determination. Asher, meanwhile, immersed himself in refining his sword aura and delving deeper into the mysteries of his Soul Reaper Monarch abilities. His training regimen was intense, incorporating not only physical mastery but also the delicate balance between the tangible and the ethereal. He summoned his unholy knight once again, a formidable entity whose strength had now increased by 300% after their earlier enhancements. The knight's amplified abilities made for a relentless sparring partner, pushing Asher to the limits of his swordsmanship. Each clash of their blades reverberated with power, forcing Asher to adapt and evolve, integrating precision with adaptability. Through these bouts, Asher began to uncover ways to merge his physical prowess with his soul-based powers, crafting techniques that transcended the traditional boundaries of combat. However, mastering his soul energy proved to be a different challenge altogether. Unlike aura, which was raw and wild but tameable, or magic, which followed defined rules, soul energy was elusive. It behaved like a shadowy child, present yet intangible, constantly teasing him with its existence while defying direct control. Asher approached it with the same calculated patience he applied to everything else, using his absolute appraisal skill to chip away at the enigma. Slowly but surely, he began to unravel its secrets, discovering nuances that allowed him to weave it into his techniques. Meanwhile, Freya trained alongside him, refusing to be left behind. Her determination was evident in every swing of her flamehound daggers and every burst of fire she unleashed. During one particularly heated sparring session, she grinned at Asher, sweat dripping down her brow. If someone's going to challenge you for the top spot, she quipped, blocking his strike with a fiery shield, it's going to be me. Only I get to take the second spot from you, and maybe the first if you slack off. Asher chuckled, stepping back and adjusting his stance. Confident, aren't you? He said, launching another attack. Freya met him head-on, her daggers ablaze, their flames intertwining with his soul aura as they clashed.
You'll see.
I've got a few tricks up my sleeve too. Their training became a dance of fire and shadows, each sparring session pushing them closer to their limits. For Freya, it wasn't just about keeping up with Asher, it was about proving to herself that she belonged by his side, not as someone in his shadow, but as an equal. For Asher, her relentless drive was both a source of motivation and a reminder of the importance of having allies he could trust. Together, they honed their skills, both knowing that greater challenges lay ahead. A few days later, the inevitable happened, the compulsory challenge that Asher could no longer refuse.
And of course, it was Tiara.
Finally, no more hiding, Magnus, she declared, standing confidently in front of him on the grand arena stage. Her piercing gaze bore into him as the crowd murmured with anticipation. Asher looked at her calmly, his expression unreadable. "Why are you so obsessed with me?" he asked, his voice steady but edged with curiosity. Every day since her arrival, she had sought him out, her intensity growing until he could no longer avoid the confrontation. Now here they stood, face to face with all eyes on them. Tiara smirked, brushing a strand of her silver hair over her shoulder.
Obsessed? Hardly.
I'm here to prove something, to everyone including myself. You might be the Academy's golden boy, but I'll show them you're not invincible. Experience more tales on my virtual library empire. Asher sighed, glancing at the spectators before fixing his gaze back on her. If that's what you need to feel accomplished, then fine. Let's get this over with. The crowd roared in excitement as the stage lit up, signaling the start of the battle. Asher had done his research on Tiara before this challenge. She was known as Tiara of Radiance, an elite talent whose innate ability, Starchild, allowed her to wield the destructive power of stars. Essentially, she could manipulate high-energy plasma, a phenomenon akin to a deadly fusion of flames and lightning. Her powers weren't just immense, they were devastatingly precise. Rumors said she had honed her ability to the point where she could vaporize a mountain with a concentrated burst of energy or incinerate a horde of enemies in a single strike, all while maintaining impeccable control. This control over her destructive energy had earned her a reputation as one of the most dangerous damage dealers in the Academy. Well, let's see what she's got, Asher muttered under his breath, activating his innate ability. As the energy surged through him, he chose to manifest his blood ruler form, a state he always used in front of world, hiding his other powers. With a single motion, he summoned his weapon, a massive blood-red scythe that radiated a sinister, almost otherworldly aura. The blade shimmered faintly with black and crimson streaks, evidence of the poison it carried, a lethal force infused with his innate ability. The arena felt heavy, the air charged with anticipation as the two faced each other. Tiara's form began to glow, her star child powers activating. Radiant energy enveloped her, pulsating like a miniature sun, while her hair seemed to float weightlessly, glowing with streaks of light. Asher gripped his scythe, the darkish red mist around him swirling violently, contrasting sharply with her blazing light. The audience fell silent, sensing the clash of two opposing forces, the celestial radiance of a star and the ominous Blood Reaper. "Don't hold back," Tiara said, her voice firm yet eager, her eyes blazing with determination. "I never do," Asher replied calmly, his scythe spinning in his hands as he readied himself. With that, the battle began. The battle began with a deafening roar as Tiara launched the first attack. A concentrated beam of radiant plasma shot from her hands, its brightness overwhelming and its heat intense enough to distort the air around it. Asher sidestepped with uncanny precision, the beam missing him by mere inches and carving a molten scar into the arena floor. Asher's scythe dissolved into crimson mist, leaving his hands free. His blood manipulation ability activated, and a crimson pool formed at his feet, spreading rapidly. With a flick of his wrist, the blood solidified into jagged spikes, shooting toward Tiara like a volley of spears. Tiara spun, a shield of radiant energy forming around her. The blood spikes sizzled and evaporated upon contact, leaving nothing but faint steam trails in the air. "Is that all you've got?" she taunted, her voice echoing through the arena. "Continue reading on my virtual library empire." Asher smirked, raising his hand. The evaporated blood reformed into a thick mist around her, obscuring her vision. "Who said I needed to hit you directly?" he murmured. The mist thickened, and Tiara coughed, sensing the metallic taste of blood in the air. It wasn't just mist, it was infused with a paralytic toxin he had assimilated in his blood. Tiara responded by releasing a burst of radiant energy, dispersing the mist in an explosive wave. "You'll need more than tricks," she said, her body glowing even brighter. She raised her hand, and dozens of plasma orbs formed around her, each the size of a basketball. With emotion, they hurled toward Asher in rapid succession. Asher's movements were fluid as he dodged and redirected the orbs using tendrils of blood that emerged from the ground. The blood tendrils coiled around the orbs, absorbing some of their heat before they dissipated. But a few slipped past his defenses, and one grazed his shoulder, leaving a searing burn. "You're getting serious," Asher remarked, his voice calm despite the injury. The blood from his wound dripped to the ground, but instead of being a disadvantage, it became a weapon. The droplets expanded into blades, floating around him like a crimson halo. He thrust his hands forward, and the blood blades shot toward Tiara in a synchronized attack. Tiara leapt into the air, her speed blinding, and countered with radiant arcs of plasma that cut through the blades. But as she landed, she noticed the blades reforming, becoming faster and more precise with each iteration. "You're persistent," she admitted, a hint of frustration in her voice. Asher didn't reply. Instead, he clasped his hands together, and the entire arena floor turned crimson. Blood surged upward in a tidal wave, towering above Tiara before crashing down. She planted her feet firmly, her energy flaring as she unleashed a radiant explosion to repel the attack. The wave split, but Asher was already moving, appearing behind her as if stepping out of the blood itself. He swung his hand in an arc, and the blood on the ground shot up, forming a whip that lashed toward her. Tiara countered with a radiant blade, slicing through the whip, but the severed pieces transformed into a net, ensnaring her momentarily. Asher capitalized, sending a stream of blood needles directly at her. Tiara's aura flared again, burning away the net and intercepting most of the needles, but a few found their mark, grazing her skin and drawing blood. "You're getting on my nerves," she hissed, wiping the blood from her cheek. Her aura intensified, and her radiance reached its peak. The temperature in the arena skyrocketed as she summoned a massive sphere of plasma above her head. "Let's see if your blood tricks can handle this," she declared, hurling the sphere at Asher with devastating force. The heat was unbearable, and the sphere's descent caused the ground to crack and melt. Asher stood his ground, his hands outstretched. The blood beneath him surged upward, forming a massive shield. The sphere collided with the shield, the impact shaking the arena. For a moment, it seemed the shield would hold, but cracks began to form. With a roar, Asher manipulated the blood shield to split the sphere in two, redirecting its energy to either side. The split plasma detonated upon contact with the arena walls, the explosion leaving the audience stunned. Both fighters stood in the aftermath, panting but unyielding. Tiara's radiance had dimmed slightly, and Asher's usually stoic expression showed signs of exertion. "You're tougher than I thought," Tiara admitted, her voice begrudgingly respectful. "You're not bad yourself," Asher replied, a smirk tugging at his lips. The battle wasn't over, it was just an warm-up as they both begin to now charge up. "The real fight is just beginning," Asher said, his voice calm but edged with anticipation. "You made a mistake underestimating me earlier," Tiara shot back, her tone laced with determination. Her energy surged, a blinding aura surrounding her as glowing wings unfurled behind her. Above her, a radiant halo of light began to take shape. "Starform Angel," she declared, her voice resonating with power as her transformation completed. Her body glowed with an almost divine brilliance. "Let's see if you can handle this." Asher observed her new form with a raised brow. "Impressive. But don't think light alone is enough to blind me," he remarked, his tone unfazed. Tiara didn't waste any more time. She condensed her radiant energy into a gleaming sword and shot forward with blinding speed. The ground beneath her cracked from the sheer force of her launch. In a blink, she closed the distance, her sword aimed directly at Asher's chest. Reacting in an instant, Asher summoned a crimson barrier from his blood manipulation. The sword pierced through it, but the barrier slowed the blade's momentum enough for Asher to step aside, avoiding a fatal injury. However, a shallow cut appeared on his arm, glowing faintly as Tiara's energy seeped into the wound. "Not bad," Asher said, his lips curving into a smirk. "But now it's my turn." He raised his hand, and blood erupted around him, enveloping his body. The crimson liquid hardened into a menacing black-red armor, crackling with veins of crimson lightning. His scythe reformed in his hand, now infused with the same volatile energy, its blade glowing faintly as blood and lightning coursed through it. He raised his hand, and blood erupted around him, enveloping his body. The crimson liquid hardened into a menacing black-red armor, crackling with veins of crimson lightning. His scythe reformed in his hand, now infused with the same volatile energy, its blade glowing faintly as blood and lightning coursed through it. "You're not the only one with a trump card," Asher said, his voice echoing ominously as the air around him grew heavy. Tiara narrowed her eyes, but before she could respond, Asher vanished from her sight. He reappeared above her, his scythe swinging down with ferocious speed. She raised her radiant blade to block, and the clash sent shockwaves rippling through the arena. Sparks of red and gold danced in the air as the two energies collided, their clash momentarily lighting up the entire battlefield. Tiara gritted her teeth as she was forced back. Her wings flared, propelling her into the sky. From above, she rained down beams of light, each one capable of reducing the ground to ash. Asher responded by summoning a crimson dome around himself, the blood absorbing and redirecting the beams into erratic streams of energy that scorched the surroundings. "Let's see how you handle this," Tiara shouted as she gathered energy, forming a massive lance of pure light. With a mighty throw, she sent it hurtling toward Asher, its speed and power shaking the arena.
Asher didn't flinch.
He raised his scythe, channeling his blood manipulation into its blade. With a roar, he swung it upward, splitting the lance in two. The remnants exploded behind him, the shockwave ruffling his armor but leaving him unharmed. "You're good," Asher said, his tone almost casual. "But you're relying too much on overwhelming force. Where is your precision now?" He extended his hand, and the blood on the battlefield gathered into a series of intricate, floating weapons, spears, daggers, and chains, all crackling with crimson lightning. With a flick of his wrist, they shot toward Tiara, each one targeting her from a different angle. Tiara spun her radiant blade, deflecting the weapons with graceful precision. But as she blocked one, another pierced her wing, dissipating part of her energy. She grunted, realizing that the weapons weren't just physical, they drained her power upon contact. "You're a tough opponent," she admitted, breathing heavily. "But I'm not done yet." "Good," Asher replied, his armor glowing brighter. "Because neither am I." The two warriors charged at each other once again, their powers clashing in a dance of light and blood, each move more intense than the last. The arena trembled under their battle, the crowd watching in stunned silence as the fight continued to escalate beyond anything they had ever seen. Asher pointed his scythe toward Tiara, summoning a massive crimson orb crackling with red lightning. The energy within the orb pulsated, radiating an ominous and destructive power. Tiara, undeterred, gathered her strength and unleashed her own radiant nova, a dazzling sphere of blue-white energy that shone like a miniature star. The two devastating attacks surged toward each other, colliding in the center of the arena with a deafening roar. The clash of red and white energy lit up the sky, the sheer force shaking the ground beneath them. For a moment, it seemed evenly matched, as the two energies pushed against each other in a deadly stalemate. But slowly, the crimson nova began to overwhelm the radiant one. Its intense energy seeped through, consuming the white-blue light and pushing forward relentlessly. Tiara's radiant sphere started to crack under the pressure, and within seconds, the red nova shattered through, surging toward her. The crimson energy struck Tiara, engulfing her in a blinding wave of red lightning and blood-like energy. The force knocked her backward, her radiant armor fracturing and dissipating as the attack left her trembling and weakened. She collapsed to her knees, her body covered in residual red sparks. The arena fell silent for a moment before the referee's voice echoed. "Asher Magnus wins," the announcer declared, the words cutting through the tense atmosphere. Asher stood tall, his crimson aura slowly fading as he lowered his scythe. He glanced at Tiara, who was struggling to steady her breath, her pride visibly wounded but her spirit unbroken as she continued to glare at him. Medics rushed in, their healing light enveloping Tiara as the crowd erupted into cheers and murmurs. Asher turned away, walking toward the edge of the arena without a word, his victory cementing his dominance once again in the academy. "Well, that's earned you another 6 days of rest," Freya said, joining him with a smirk. Asher shrugged nonchalantly. "I can guarantee that Elven Girl is going to claim me as her target again," he replied, his tone casual, as though the fight hadn't taken anything out of him. Freya rolled her eyes. "Her name is Tiara, by the way," she corrected. "Whatever her name is," Asher said with a dismissive wave of his hand, "she's just another challenger who couldn't back up her confidence." Freya sighed, shaking her head as she walked alongside him. "You could at least pretend to remember the names of the people you fight." "Why bother?" Asher quipped, his lips curling into a faint smirk. "I'm starting to think half of them just want the spotlight of fighting me. Discover hidden content at my virtual library empire." Freya chuckled, leaning slightly closer to him. "And the other half?" "They probably want to kill me," Asher said flatly, though his smirk deepened, showing he wasn't particularly worried about either group. Freya gave him a playful nudge. "Well, if you keep acting like this, I might just join the second group someday." "Yeah, but I know you'd never win," Asher teased, earning himself a glare and a muttered insult from Freya as they made their way out of the arena. As Asher and Freya exited the arena, a wave of eyes lingered on his back, each gaze carrying its own intent: curiosity, admiration, or envy. Among them, a group of students stood huddled, their attention fixated on him. "Are you going to challenge him next?" asked one student, a reptilian being with scales glistening under the academy's lights. He had the appearance of a walking lizard, complete with clawed hands and a tail swaying behind him. Are you going to challenge him next? Asked one student, a reptilian being with scales glistening under the academy's lights. He had the appearance of a walking lizard, complete with clawed hands and a tail swaying behind him. Leonard, the Dragonborn, stood at the center of the group, his golden eyes locked onto Asher's retreating figure. His imposing frame and the faint glimmer of scales across his skin spoke volumes about his heritage. He didn't flinch as he responded, his voice deep and resolute. My pride won't let me rest until I defeat him and reclaim my #1 spot. Like Tiara before him, Leonard had once been a reigning champion in his own academy, a title he wore with pride. But here, in the World Academy, he had lost his top position to Asher. Now his resolve burned brightly. He would take back what he believed was rightfully his. The lizard-like student tilted his head. You better be careful.
He's different.
Even Tiara couldn't take him down. Leonard's lips curled into a sharp grin, exposing teeth reminiscent of a predator. Tiara relied on raw power, but I am a warrior of strategy and strength. He'll fall, just like everyone else who underestimated me. As the group murmured among themselves, Leonard's gaze never wavered. His eyes followed Asher until he disappeared from sight, a silent promise burning in his mind. Soon. A few days later, the training grounds buzzed with energy as students sparred, trained, and honed their skills. Asher stood at the edge, observing the scene, his expression calm as always. Beside him, Freya was busy stretching, preparing for her own training session. From across the grounds, Leonard approached with deliberate steps, his towering frame and dragon-like features commanding attention. The crowd parted instinctively, whispers rippling through the air as the Dragonborn made his way toward Asher. Asher Magnus, Leonard called, his deep voice carrying over the noise. Asher turned, raising a brow.
Leonard, right? What do you want?
Leonard stopped a few feet away, his golden eyes glowing faintly. I'm challenging you to a duel. Asher sighed, already shaking his head. Not interested. I've had my share of duels this week. The murmurs around them grew louder, the crowd clearly intrigued by the tension between the academy's top-ranked students.
Leonard's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down.
Are you refusing because you're afraid? Asher smirked, his tone light but cutting.
Afraid? No.
Just not interested in wasting my time. Leonard growled softly, his claws flexing. Then let me make it worth your while. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small, ornate chest. Opening it, he revealed a glimmering golden scale, pulsating with faint energy. The crowd gasped. Freya's eyes widened as she leaned closer to Asher. That's a Dragonlord scale. Those are almost impossible to find. Asher's expression shifted, his usual indifference giving way to mild curiosity. You're offering that just to fight me? Leonard nodded firmly. It's more than a treasure. It's a key to one of the dragon tombs on my home continent. Win and it's yours. Asher crossed his arms, his gaze narrowing as he studied Leonard. And if you win? You admit I'm the stronger warrior and step down from the top rank, Leonard said, his voice steady and unwavering. The silence that followed was palpable. Finally, Asher nodded, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. All right, you've got my attention. I accept your challenge. Leonard grinned, his sharp teeth glinting in the sunlight. Good. Meet me in the arena tomorrow. As the crowd erupted with excitement, Freya gave Asher a sideways glance. Now that is something one can't resist. Experience more content on my virtual library empire.
Asher shrugged.
I'm not passing up a chance like that. The Dragon Tomb, a fabled dungeon located in the heart of the Dragon Beast continent, was not just any dungeon. It was an ancient, icy expanse filled with the remnants of mighty dragons, bones, scales, and relics of their immense power. The tomb was a revered place, accessible to anyone regardless of their rank or strength, making it an alluring destination for adventurers and warriors from across the world. The dungeon was particularly significant to the Dragonborn and the Dragon Beast clans. They used it as a sacred ground for awakening and evolving their dragon bloodlines. Once a year, the tomb opened for a single month, during which challengers entered to claim dragon blood relics and ascend their powers. It was a test of both courage and skill, as the tomb's traps and lingering dragon spirits were not to be trifled with. For Asher, the prospect of entering the dragon tomb wasn't just about treasure, it was an opportunity to gain something rare and invaluable, dragon essence. With his growing mastery of his abilities, such a resource could amplify his strength beyond imagination. Leonhart turned and walked away, his tail swaying slightly, an air of confidence following him. Asher remained composed, quietly preparing for what promised to be a formidable challenge. On the day of the duel, the arena was alive with hushed anticipation. Leonhardt stood at the center, his red armor catching the sunlight, while his massive greatsword rested upright in the ground beside him, an imposing sight that left little doubt about his strength. Asher stepped into the arena in his plain academy uniform, unbothered by the lack of elaborate protection. Leonhardt's gaze swept over him. "No armor?" he asked, his voice low but carrying. "I don't need it," Asher answered, his tone even and unconcerned. Leonhardt let out a quiet chuckle, his lips curling into a faint smirk. He grasped his greatsword and raised it, the weighty blade pointing toward Asher. "Have it your way," he said simply. Asher extended a hand, and in an instant, the crimson glow of his blood scythe materialized. This time, it carried a faint sheen of energy, an almost imperceptible aura that rippled through the air. Asher had made his preparations. He would not take his opponent lightly. The air between them grew charged as their auras clashed silently, an invisible struggle playing out before the first strike. Around them, the audience fell quiet, all eyes locked on the two figures in the arena. The duel began with no further words exchanged. The silence was broken by Leonhardt's sudden movement. Despite his size, he closed the distance with remarkable speed, his greatsword cutting through the air with a heavy whistle. Asher sidestepped, the massive blade narrowly missing him and cleaving into the ground with a resounding thud. Asher countered quickly, his blood scythe humming as it arced toward Leonhardt in a flash of crimson light. Leonhardt brought his sword up just in time, the two weapons clashing with a burst of energy that sent ripples through the arena. Leonhardt grinned, his dragon-like features twisting with excitement. "Not bad," he said, his voice steady as he pushed against the scythe with his greatsword. The ground beneath them cracked from the sheer force of their clash. Asher said nothing, pivoting to break the deadlock and stepping back to reassess. Leonhardt followed, pressing the attack with a series of powerful swings. Each strike carried immense force, shaking the ground and forcing Asher to stay light on his feet. But Asher wasn't merely dodging. He watched Leonhardt's movements closely, noting the slight delay between each swing of the heavy blade. When Leonhardt raised his sword high for a downward strike, Asher saw his chance. Channeling his blood manipulation ability, Asher infused his scythe with energy, extending the crimson blade momentarily to slash at Leonhardt's exposed side. The attack connected, leaving a shallow gash on Leonhardt's armor. Leonhardt staggered slightly but recovered quickly, his grin unfaltering. "You've got some tricks," he said, flexing his shoulders as the wound began to close. The faint glow of dragon blood pulsed through his veins, healing him faster than normal. Within moments his injury was healed as Asher looked at it. Asher remained silent, his expression calm. He adjusted his grip on the scythe, and the weapon shifted, its form slightly altering as more energy flowed into it. The audience leaned forward, sensing a shift in the battle. Leonhardt planted his feet, his aura flaring with power. The ground beneath him began to heat as cracks formed, releasing steam. With a low growl, he swung his sword in a wide arc, releasing a shockwave of energy that raced toward Asher. Reacting quickly, Asher spun his scythe, creating a barrier of crimson energy that absorbed the brunt of the attack. The force pushed him back, but he held his ground. "You're better than I expected," Leonhardt admitted, his tone tinged with respect. "But I've only just started." Leonhardt's aura intensified, his red armor glowing faintly as he seemed to grow larger, his dragon heritage becoming more pronounced. The crowd murmured in awe as his transformation began to take shape. Asher's grip on his scythe tightened, his crimson eyes narrowing. He could feel the growing power emanating from Leonhardt, but he showed no signs of backing down. Instead, he tapped deeper into his own abilities, the crimson hue of his scythe darkening as his blood manipulation reached new levels. The two warriors faced each other again, their auras colliding like storm fronts. The fight had only begun, but it was clear that neither intended to hold back. The crowd was silent as Asher and Leonhardt faced off, their auras clashing subtly in the air. Without a word, Leonhardt gripped his massive greatsword, the crimson glow of draconic energy surrounding the blade. With a sharp exhale, he leapt forward, his weapon descending in a massive arc aimed at cleaving Asher in two. Asher's reaction was instantaneous. Twisting his scythe upward, he caught the blade mid-swing, redirecting its energy to the side. Sparks flew as the weapons collided, the sound reverberating throughout the arena. Leonhardt didn't hesitate, spinning with the momentum of his deflected strike and aiming a horizontal slash at Asher's midsection. Asher ducked, his scythe already in motion, slicing upward toward Leonhardt's exposed side. The Dragonborn twisted his body just enough to evade the blade, planting his feet firmly on the ground and unleashing a powerful forward thrust. Asher sidestepped the attack, the tip of the greatsword grazing his uniform as he spun around Leonhardt, delivering a quick slash with the back edge of his scythe. The blade connected with Leonhardt's armor, creating a shallow gash. Leonhardt growled, pivoting with surprising speed for his size and swinging his weapon in a wide arc. Asher leaned back, the blade passing just inches from his face, and countered by slamming the butt of his scythe into the ground. Using the leverage, he vaulted over Leonhardt, twisting in mid-air to slash at his opponent from above. Leonhardt raised his sword in defense, the two weapons clashing with a deafening impact. Asher landed lightly, but Leonhardt was already pressing forward. With a roar, he stomped the ground, sending shockwaves rippling outward. Asher's footing faltered for a split second, giving Leonhardt the opportunity to swing his sword in a downward strike. Asher raised his scythe horizontally to block the blow, but the sheer force of the attack drove him to one knee. The arena floor cracked beneath him as he gritted his teeth, holding his ground. "Not bad," Leonhardt said, stepping back and letting his sword rest on his shoulder for a moment. "But let's see how you handle this." He thrust his sword into the ground, and with a guttural roar, summoned fiery dragon-shaped constructs that spiraled into the air. The dragons roared as they dove toward Asher, their forms radiating searing heat. Asher's expression remained calm as he extended his free hand, summoning tendrils of blood energy from his body. The crimson tendrils coiled around the incoming dragons, binding them mid-flight and absorbing their energy. With a twist of his hand, Asher redirected the gathered power into his scythe, its blade glowing with a mix of red and golden light. He spun the weapon, releasing a massive wave of energy that surged toward Leonhardt. Leonhardt reacted instantly, lifting his sword and slamming it into the ground. A fiery explosion erupted around him, meeting Asher's wave head-on. The two forces collided, creating a blinding flash of light that momentarily engulfed the arena. When the dust settled, both fighters were still standing, their auras crackling with residual energy. "Impressive," Leonhardt admitted, tightening his grip on his sword. "But I'm not done yet." Before Asher could respond, Leonhardt charged forward again, his sword trailing flames. Asher shifted his stance, his scythe spinning in intricate patterns as he met Leonhardt head-on. Their weapons clashed in a flurry of strikes, each one faster and more precise than the last. Leonhardt's brute strength and fiery attacks were countered by Asher's agility and masterful control of his blood manipulation, the two fighters seeming to move in perfect synchronization. As the fight wore on, Asher began to shift his strategy. He channeled his blood manipulation to form a crimson armor around his body, enhancing his speed and reflexes. With his newfound agility, he closed the distance between him and Leonhardt, launching a series of rapid strikes that forced the Dragonborn onto the defensive. Leonhardt roared, his armor glowing brighter as he unleashed another powerful swing. Asher ducked under the attack, his scythe slicing upward and catching Leonhardt's shoulder. Blood sprayed from the wound, but Leonhardt barely flinched. "Good," he said, grinning through the pain. "Now we're getting somewhere." Summoning the last reserves of his strength, Leonhardt unleashed his ultimate technique. His sword erupted in flames, the fire taking the shape of a massive dragon that roared as it surged toward Asher. Without hesitation, Asher raised his scythe, channeling all of his blood energy into the blade. With a single, precise swing, he released a crimson shockwave that collided with the fiery dragon. The two forces battled for dominance, the arena trembling under their power. Finally, Asher's energy overwhelmed Leonhardt's attack, the crimson wave slicing through the fiery dragon and striking Leonhardt directly. The Dragonborn staggered back, his armor shattered and his weapon falling from his grasp. He collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily as he stared at Asher. "It's over," Asher said, his voice calm but firm as he lowered his scythe. Leonhardt chuckled, shaking his head. "You're stronger than I thought," he admitted. "You've earned this victory." The crowd erupted into cheers as the announcer declared Asher the winner. Leonhardt stood slowly, extending a hand to Asher. "I'll be back," he said with a grin. "And next time I won't lose." Asher clasped his hand briefly, offering a small nod before turning and walking away, the cheers of the crowd following him out of the arena. Stay tuned with my virtual library empire. As Leonhardt was being tended to by the medics, two students approached him. One was Tiara, the top student from the Elven continent, who had already tasted defeat at Asher's hands. The other was a dwarf named Gander, a stout and muscular teenager whose impressive beard made him look older than his years. "You two already lost to him, eh?" Gander grinned, rubbing his hands together. "Looks like it's my turn to take him down." Unlike humans from the Central World, the other continent's representatives often mingled with one another due to their shared experiences. While they competed fiercely, their bonds as students of diverse backgrounds tied them together, making them familiar with each other's strengths and weaknesses. Unlike humans from the Central World, the other continent's representatives often mingled with one another due to their shared experiences. While they competed fiercely, their bonds as students of diverse backgrounds tied them together, making them familiar with each other's strengths and weaknesses. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the crowd, a pale-skinned boy and girl, both with a faint otherworldly aura, observed Asher and Leonhardt from a distance. "He's got such mastery over blood," the boy muttered, his crimson eyes narrowing. "You think he's a vampire like us?" The girl shook her head, her voice soft but firm.
"No, he's not one of us.
"His power comes from something else entirely. But it's almost as if it rivals the abilities of a pure-blood vampire." The two exchanged glances before quietly leaving the scene, their expressions thoughtful as they considered what they had just witnessed. Find your next read on my virtual library empire. After the catastrophic destruction of their own world, the people of Darvwis sought refuge on Volorisa. Upon arrival, they shared their knowledge of essence awakening, a process that allowed individuals to harness the energy of the land. The humans of Volorisa quickly adopted this knowledge, using it to repel the invaders who had already claimed large portions of the planet under Great Invasion. This conflict resulted in a restructuring of Volorisa's political and geographic landscape. The central human continent, the largest and most powerful, became a hub of power and culture. Meanwhile, the other races, elves, dwarves, beastkin, and the denizens of the Dark Continent, including vampires, werewolves, and witches, retreated to their respective territories. Each group established its own identity and governance, shaping their lands to reflect their distinct ways of life. The Elven continent flourished with ethereal beauty and advanced magic. The Dwarven continent thrived with intricate craftsmanship and engineering marvels. The Beastkin continent embraced its primal traditions and connection to nature. The Dark continent, shrouded in mystery and superstition, became a haven for nocturnal races like vampires and werewolves. Despite deep-seated animosities and differences, the races eventually forged a treaty. Their earlier infighting had nearly led to their collective doom, forcing them to confront the reality that unity was their only path forward. The treaty ensured mutual cooperation and coexistence, preventing further conflicts and securing a fragile peace in Volorisa. Now, although prejudices and rivalries still linger beneath the surface, the inhabitants of Volorisa understand the value of unity. Together, they strive to preserve their shared world, a testament to the resilience of those who can set aside their differences for the greater good. Each race reluctantly signed the peace treaty, their survival hinging on collective unity even if deep-rooted animosities persisted. Though coexistence was achieved, most races chose to keep to themselves, isolating their cultures and traditions. However, for the first time since the apocalypse, members of all races were now attending the same prestigious academy. This groundbreaking integration brought not only opportunities for growth but also fierce competition. The academy became a microcosm of Volorisa's diversity, a melting pot where tensions simmered just below the surface. Challenges between students were more than individual battles. They became a stage to prove the superiority of one race over another. Factions formed naturally, with races banding together, each striving to assert their dominance. Pride and prejudice fueled every rivalry, as old grievances and biases clashed in the halls of learning. Asher Magnus, a human, found himself at the epicenter of this storm. A prodigy in his own right, he was a symbol of human resilience and strength, as well as a descendant of the Magnus family, a lineage credited with playing a pivotal role in humanity's survival on Volorisa. This lineage marked him as both a source of inspiration for humans and a target for other races who sought to prove themselves superior. Challenges came frequently, not just from rivals in his own race but from every corner of the academy. Elves tested his precision, dwarves his endurance, beastkin his adaptability, and even the cunning vampires and werewolves from the Dark Continent sought to unsettle him. Yet, Asher faced each challenge with unshakable composure, proving time and again that his prowess was no fluke. His ability to adapt, strategize, and overwhelm his opponents set him apart, earning him both admiration and resentment. Though the academy was a crucible of competition, it also became a stage where races began to grudgingly acknowledge each other's strengths. The foundation of peace that had been laid by necessity was now being tested in the next generation, not just in treaties or distant lands but in every duel, collaboration, and debate within the academy's walls. And Asher, whether he liked it or not, found himself at the forefront of this evolving narrative. 2 years passed, and with the ban on dungeon raids lifted, Asher Magnus was able to delve deep into their depths, accumulating the resources and knowledge he needed. Through relentless effort and mastery, he reached the prismatic rank, a level of power no one in this world, or even this universe, had ever achieved. When Asher ascended to this rank, his system bestowed upon him the title of First Prismatic Realm Achiever in the universe. This unprecedented achievement wasn't his only triumph. By conquering the Infinity Tower, he not only honed his abilities but also obtained the long-sought Sword Aura Ascension and Soul Ascension Potion, complementing his mastery over aura and soul energy. This synergistic growth propelled both his aura and soul energy to the prismatic rank, making him unparalleled in all three fundamental energies: mana, aura, and soul energy. Asher Magnus, now at the peak of all three energy systems, had surpassed the limits of any known warrior. He became a force of nature, capable of defeating even the Awakener opponents with ease. Despite his immense power, Asher remained reserved, using his strength only when necessary. For 12 consecutive years, he maintained the title of champion and ranked number 1 in the academy, untouchable by anyone who dared challenge him. He fought not for glory but for a purpose, keeping his power hidden unless absolutely necessary. Now, the day of graduation had arrived. It marked the end of an era, where Asher and his peers would leave the academy as fully realized warriors, stepping into the world as E-rank awakeners, the starting point of true independence and growth. For many, it was a moment of excitement and anticipation, but for Asher, it was simply the next step in his journey, one that he knew would hold even greater challenges and mysteries. In this world, and indeed across the universe, the graduation process is inherently tied to the concept of a second awakening. While each race approaches this rite differently, the ultimate goal is the same: to unlock the body's full potential and solidify the bond between one's energy essence and their core. For humans, the journey to this moment is unique. Unlike many other races who are born with naturally developed energy vein systems, humans must construct their energy vein network through rigorous training and cultivation. This network allows energy to flow efficiently throughout the body, linking to the mana core or foundation core that is first awakened during the initial rites at the foundation rank. The first awakening, typically occurring in childhood or early adolescence, is the foundational step. It marks the creation of the mana core, which allows an individual to access and channel their innate energy. For humans, this is when they officially begin their journey as awakeners. For other races like elves, dwarves, and beastkin, the process is more seamless, as their natural physiology often provides advantages humans lack. By the age of 18, this awakening serves as a rite of passage. Graduates leave the academy, step beyond the safe zones, and begin to explore the vast and perilous world outside. They confront its dangers, mysteries, and opportunities, stepping into the unknown with newfound freedom. The Second Awakening. The Second Awakening is pivotal, often seen as the threshold that separates novices from true cultivators. It involves activating the energy vein system fully, allowing complete synchronization between the body's natural pathways and the mana core. This process does two crucial things. Unleashes dormant potential. Before the Second Awakening, individuals only utilize about 50% of their potential energy output. After awakening their energy veins, they gain access to up to 90% to 99% of their core's capabilities. Enhances efficiency. With a fully activated vein system, energy usage becomes far more efficient, enabling stronger techniques, higher stamina, and quicker recovery rates. Now comes the unique aspect of Asher's prismatic core. Unlike other peak cores, such as the diamond core, which caps at 99% synchronization, the prismatic core breaks this limit entirely, achieving a full 100% synchronization. This is the defining characteristic of the prismatic core: complete access to one's potential, leaving nothing untapped. It represents the pinnacle of energy cultivation, where every ounce of power within the core is accessible, and no energy is left dormant. This unprecedented feature not only amplifies Asher's strength but also ensures he operates at levels no other being can match. The 1% difference may seem trivial at first glance, but as one ascends higher through the ranks, the gap becomes increasingly significant. For Asher, this seemingly small edge will prove to be monumental in the future, setting him apart as he continues to grow in power. However, Asher wasn't the only one to achieve a prismatic core. Freya, with her unique and mysterious lineage, had also awakened a prismatic core on her own, though the process remained a deeply personal secret. Freya had scoured the ancient tomes in the library of academies seeking knowledge about the rarity and significance of her awakening, but she never found anything about it. Despite that, she chose to remain silent about her prismatic core. Freya understood the implications of revealing her unique status. If anyone, particularly those with malicious intent, discovered her secret, she could be subjected to ruthless scrutiny or even experimentation. Her existence would be dissected, literally and metaphorically, by those who sought to uncover how she had achieved such a feat. This fear extended beyond her. Exposing the truth could endanger those who had sheltered and protected her, including her family and allies. Thus, Freya kept her prismatic awakening hidden, even as she lived among others unaware of her grandeur. She carried the burden of being something extraordinary, something others could only dream of, or perhaps couldn't even fathom. Today, the grand auditorium of the World Academy was alive with anticipation. It was a momentous day for all the students who had reached the age of their second awakening, an essential milestone marking their transition to fully realizing their potential. The air was thick with energy, excitement, and a hint of nervousness. Standing at the forefront of the stage was Yulia, the director of the academy for the year, her presence commanding respect. Beside her were representatives from each of the great continents, an elegant elven lady with a serene yet imposing aura, an elder dwarf whose sturdy frame and braided beard symbolized his people's unyielding strength, a towering draconian with sharp features and scales glinting under the lights, and a pale vampire exuding a chilling grace. Each of these figures held immense prestige, representing their respective races and lands: the Elven Continent, Dwarvian Mountains, Dragonkin Plains of Beast Continent, and the Dark Continent. Their combined presence was a testament to the significance of this occasion. They were here not only to oversee the process but also to guide and ensure the students' safe passage through this pivotal step. The auditorium was filled with rows of students, all wearing the Academy's ceremonial attire. They stood in quiet anticipation, the weight of the moment reflected in their faces. Among them was Asher, his calm demeanor as unshakable as ever, and Freya, her fiery spirit concealed behind a composed exterior. Both knew the gravity of what lay ahead. Explore new worlds at my virtual library empire. The Second Awakening was not just a ceremonial act, it was a profound transformation. This was the moment when one's core and energy veins would fully synchronize, unlocking their body's untapped potential and marking their true entry into the world of advanced power. For humans, this process was the culmination of years of preparation, as they were born without innate energy veins. For other races, while the process was more natural, it was no less significant. Yulia stepped forward, her voice ringing clear and steady. Today marks a defining moment in your journeys. The Second Awakening is not merely a rite of passage, it is the gateway to your true potential. What you achieve here today will shape not only your future but also the world's. The room fell silent as the representatives began to prepare their respective tools for the awakening process. Each student's core and energy alignment would be personally overseen, ensuring no one was left behind. The ceremonial process commenced, with students stepping forward one by one under the watchful eyes of the Academy's representatives. The air buzzed with anticipation as the awakening chambers, ancient artifacts designed to harmonize core energy with energy veins, hummed to life. The first group consisted of students from lesser-known families. Their performances varied, but the results were consistent: fully developed diamond cores, the pinnacle of potential for most individuals. The room erupted in applause as each student completed their alignment process, their elation evident as they rejoined their peers. Though these students hailed from modest backgrounds, their presence at the Academy was proof of their exceptional talent. All had reached the esteemed milestone of a diamond core during their second awakening. The awakening process itself was both simple and profound. Each student felt a surge of power as their energy veins seamlessly fused with their foundational cores, completing the transformation. With this, they officially became E-rank awakeners. Next came the students of prestigious lineages. The atmosphere grew tense as they took their turns, the weight of high expectations heavy in the air. Their awakenings were far more dramatic, flashes of energy surged around them, and some even attained additional elemental affinities alongside enhanced diamond cores. Yet, these remarkable displays served merely as a prelude to the main event, the awakening of the Academy's most gifted. When Asher's name was called, silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to him as he approached the awakening chamber with calm, measured steps, exuding quiet confidence. Yulia herself oversaw his awakening, her keen gaze sharp and unrelenting. Asher placed his hands on the chamber's crystalline core, and the device responded instantly. A wave of crimson energy erupted from him, weaving together with threads of golden light. The sheer force of his power caused the chamber to tremble, and the room pulsed with a potent aura of blood and light. Such purity and energy, a draconian murmured, his gaze fixed on Asher. Of course, he's a Magnus. They must have some secret technique to achieve this level of refinement, an elven representative speculated, unaware of the truth. Everyone assumed his prismatic core was an exceptionally pure diamond core, unaware that it surpassed even that, a tier beyond their comprehension. Congratulations, host, on fully awakening. Host is now an E-rank awakener. Host has been granted a cheat gotcha opportunity. Asher ignored the notifications, focusing inward as power surged through him. Clenching his fists, he muttered, energy reserves doubled, and purity significantly increased. A faint smile played at his lips as he returned to his seat. He glanced around the auditorium, observing the other students. Many were testing their newfound abilities, some with excitement, others with focused determination. Meanwhile, Asher's mind was already turning over the possibilities his cheat gotcha opportunity might bring. Next, Freya's name was called. With her usual poise, she approached the chamber, concealing the tension she felt. Unknown to most, her unique lineage had already granted her a prismatic core, something she had kept secret, even from Asher. Placing her hands on the chamber, a torrent of green and gold energy erupted, spreading like living flames. The elven representative gasped, recognizing the ancient energy tied to the world tree of life, Yggdrasil. "I'll be damned," Asher muttered under his breath, his gaze narrowing. The energy wasn't just powerful, it bore the unmistakable signature of a prismatic core, just like his own. "Continue reading at my virtual library empire. Since when has she had this?" He wondered, his mind racing. Though tempted to use absolute appraisal, he refrained, unwilling to invade her privacy. The ability would reveal more than he wanted to know, including personal secrets. She's done well to hide it, no doubt many would kill for this knowledge. He leaned back in his seat, filing the revelation away for later consideration. A faint smirk crossed his lips as he thought, interesting. We'll have to talk when the time is right. As Freya stepped down from the chamber, the energy surrounding her slowly dissipated, though its lingering aura left the room in stunned silence. Whispers rippled through the crowd, speculation brewing among the onlookers. Some were in awe, others envious, and a few even seemed apprehensive, as if they had just witnessed something far beyond their comprehension. Freya walked back to her seat with a composed expression, masking the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. She caught Asher's gaze for a brief moment, his eyes sharp yet unreadable. She knew he had noticed, he always noticed. But she also trusted him not to press the matter, at least not here. For now, she took her seat, maintaining her calm facade as the ceremony continued. The awakening process carried on, with other notable students stepping forward to claim their moment. The auditorium buzzed with awe and excitement as more extraordinary awakenings took place. Enhanced diamond cores, rare elemental affinities, and unique energy patterns became the talk of the room, but none eclipsed the displays of Asher and Freya. Toward the ceremony's conclusion, the representatives exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from impressed to contemplative. Yulia, however, remained focused, her attention flickering back to Asher and Freya. Though she said nothing, her interest was unmistakable. When the final student completed their awakening, the head representative, a regal figure with a commanding presence, stepped forward. His voice boomed across the room, commanding silence. He is an old man they all saw for the first time as he addressed everyone here. "Congratulations to all of you on your second awakening. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in your journey as awakeners. Each of you has proven worthy of your place in this academy, but remember, this is only the foundation. Your true potential lies in what you build upon it." His gaze swept over the students, lingering briefly on Asher and Freya. For some, the road ahead will be fraught with challenges that test the limits of your strength and resolve. But it is through these trials that legends are born. The room erupted in applause, a mix of pride and anticipation filling the air. Asher joined in, though his mind remained elsewhere. His thoughts kept circling back to Freya's awakening, and his own cheat gotcha opportunity. Later, as the students dispersed, Freya caught up to him in the corridor. She walked beside him in silence for a few moments before speaking, her tone casual but with a hint of curiosity. "You seemed surprised earlier," she said, glancing at him.
Asher smirked. "Shouldn't I be?"
"You've been hiding quite the secret." She shrugged lightly, though her grip on the strap of her bag tightened. "Not everything needs to be shared. You, of all people, should understand that. Stay updated via my virtual library empire." "Fair point," he replied, his tone neutral. After a brief pause, he added, "But you know this changes things, right? People are going to start asking questions, and not all of them will be friendly." "I can handle it," Freya said firmly. "I've been handling it all this time." Asher's smirk softened into a faint smile. "I don't doubt that. Just, don't hesitate to let me know if you need backup." She gave him a sidelong glance, her expression unreadable, then nodded. "Same goes for you." As they reached the end of the corridor, Freya stopped and turned to face him fully. "Asher, about what you saw." "It's your business," he interrupted gently. "I'm not going to pry. But if there's ever a time you want to talk, you know where to find me." For a moment, she looked as though she wanted to say more, but instead, she just smiled faintly. "Thanks, Asher." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone. He watched her retreating figure, his mind still racing. Whatever secret she was keeping, they weren't his to uncover, at least, not yet. Shaking off his thoughts, he went back to his room, and he pulled up his system interface, finally addressing the notification he had ignored earlier. Cheat gotcha opportunity available. Do you wish to spin? A grin crept across his face as he tapped the option to proceed. Let's see what kind of cards fate's about to deal me. Asher activated the system, and in an instant, a gotcha machine materialized before him, hovering in the air. It looked like something straight out of a bustling street in Japan, a sleek, futuristic contraption with vibrant colors and a glowing slot for the rewards. The machine whirred to life, the spinning gears and clicking sounds building anticipation. Finally, with a satisfying clink, a single ball was ejected from the machine. Asher caught it effortlessly, the orb warmed to the touch. It pulsed with energy as he began to twist it open, the faint glow growing brighter with each turn. The moment the ball snapped open, a blinding light erupted, engulfing him. The energy surged through his body, causing his vision to blur momentarily as an unfamiliar yet exhilarating sensation settled within him. Congratulations, host, on obtaining the cheat, plunder. Plunder, forcefully take anything from anyone, whether the target is alive or dead. Asher blinked, the message clear in his mind as the energy coursed through him, solidifying his new ability. A faint smirk tugged at his lips as he processed the implications of the cheat. Plunder. The ability to take anything, skills, items, even knowledge, from anyone. Alive or dead. That's absurdly powerful, he thought, the weight of the cheat's potential sinking in. His mind raced with the possibilities. Another great ability under my control, Asher murmured, his eyes fixed on his reflection.
A faint smirk crossed his face.
I guess I'm totally ready for the outside world now, he mused. Unlike the safe 12 years he had spent within the academy's walls, the time had come to venture out into the real world. Beyond the academy, their single world was under siege by two invading worlds, each hostile not only to his home but also to one another. The otherworldly forces had already dominated countless other worlds, amassing vast armies and resources, making their threat almost insurmountable. For now, Asher's world could only defend itself, unable to strike back. But that might change one day, if they could uncover the key to launching their own counteroffensive. Until then, their survival hinged on outposts and defenses, with the academy training its students to be the vanguard in this endless conflict. Time to fight on the front lines, Asher muttered, his voice low but resolute. Today is their last day at the academy. Tomorrow they will return to their families, and from there, they'll be sent to outposts, starting as mere soldiers and working their way up through the ranks. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would demand more than training and intellect. It would require grit, determination, and the will to survive in a world at war. Time to prepare. Those who are ready for battle, those who will endure, will rise above the rest. The academy had molded them, but now the true test would begin. From here, the students would scatter across the land, each heading toward their assigned outpost, where they would serve as the first line of defense against the invading forces. The war was no longer something distant, it was real, and it would demand everything from them.
Asher's thoughts sharpened.
He had come a long way, but the hardest battles were still ahead. He could feel the weight of the upcoming journey settle over him. With his new abilities and the connections he had forged, he was ready, but the road ahead would not be easy. Every step would bring them closer to the heart of the conflict, and only the strongest would emerge victorious. The last day of the academy was marked by a grand party, a celebration where every student mingled and partook in various activities. The atmosphere was lively, with laughter and music filling the room, everyone enjoying their final moments together before leaving. Asher, however, seemed detached from the revelry, though he was approached by many girls offering attention, all of which he declined. His gaze, calm and discerning, remained focused elsewhere in the room. Freya, noticing his aloofness, leaned in and whispered with a smirk, "A lot of boys are seriously jealous of you." Asher glanced at her and raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" She nodded, her eyes scanning the room briefly before landing on him again. "You're not just with me, you know. You've even brought Catherine, too. And she's the most beautiful woman in the entire academy." Asher followed her gaze, briefly noting Catherine across the room, surrounded by other students but standing out with her grace and poise. He had indeed noticed her attention earlier, though he hadn't thought much of it. But Freya's comment made him realize just how much influence his presence had in the room. "You're the one who's been by my side, Freya," Asher said, his voice neutral but hinting at a certain understanding. "But I'm not exactly one for attention." "That's obvious," Freya replied, her smile softening. "But you might want to be careful. There's more to those looks than just admiration." Asher nodded thoughtfully, his eyes scanning the crowd again. "I'll keep that in mind." The music continued to play, and the mingling grew more animated. Yet, even amid the party's excitement, Asher remained calm, already considering the road ahead. This final celebration marked the end of one chapter, but he knew the next would be far more demanding. But for now, he pushed these problems out of his mind as he danced and sang with the others, fully enjoying his night. "Give me another shot," Asher said after hours of dancing, as he approached the counter and asked for a drink. The bartender, a fellow student assigned to handle the drinks for the night, chuckled as he slid a glass toward Asher.
"Here you go."
"You're keeping up pretty well for someone who usually avoids this kind of thing." Asher smirked, taking the glass. "Just letting loose for once. Might as well enjoy the last night here." He raised the drink in a small toast before taking a sip, the warm burn of the alcohol sliding down his throat. Behind him, the music swelled, and the laughter of his peers echoed throughout the room. Freya and Catherine were still on the dance floor, each drawing their fair share of attention but always glancing back toward Asher, as if ensuring he stayed within their sight. "You're surprisingly popular tonight," a voice teased from beside him. Turning, Asher saw one of his classmates, a mischievous grin on their face. "I'd rather not be," Asher replied coolly, setting the empty glass on the counter. "Sure, keep telling yourself that," the classmate replied with a laugh before returning to the crowd. Asher shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. The night wore on, and for once, he allowed himself to relax. He joined in more conversations, danced a few more songs, and even found himself laughing at some of the ridiculous antics of his peers. Eventually, Freya and Catherine approached him, their expressions light-hearted yet expectant. "Taking a break from your admirers?" Freya quipped, folding her arms.
Asher shrugged.
"Needed a drink. Can't keep dancing forever." Catherine smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You've done well to hold out this long. Most people would have been exhausted by now." He glanced between them, their playful expressions softening the intensity of the moment. "You two seem to be having fun." Freya grinned, grabbing his hand. "And you're coming back with us. The night isn't over yet." Catherine chuckled, nodding in agreement. "Not until we say it is." Asher allowed himself to be pulled back into the crowd, letting the music and energy of the night take over once more. For now, the weight of tomorrow could wait. Tonight was for celebration, and for making memories before the challenges ahead. The night carried on in a whirlwind of music, laughter, and camaraderie. Asher found himself swept up in the energy of the party, surrounded by classmates who had all grown together over the years. The bonds they had forged through trials and triumphs felt stronger tonight than ever before. Freya and Catherine stayed close, occasionally dragging him into the center of the action. Catherine surprised him with her elegance, effortlessly commanding attention as they danced, while Freya's fiery energy was impossible to ignore. Together, they were a force that made heads turn, a trio that drew admiration and envy from everyone in the room. "Not bad for someone who claims not to enjoy parties," Freya teased during a break, her cheeks flushed with excitement as she fanned herself. "I never said that," Asher replied, smirking. "I just don't usually have time for them." Catherine leaned against a nearby table, her gaze thoughtful as she sipped her drink. "Then maybe you should make time more often. You're good at this, even if you pretend otherwise." Asher chuckled softly but didn't respond. Instead, he let his gaze sweep across the room, taking in the carefree faces of his classmates. For one night, the looming responsibilities of their futures were forgotten. They were just young, hopeful, and alive. As the hours wore on, the party began to wind down. Some students had already left, while others lingered in small groups, talking quietly or sharing laughs. The energy in the room shifted, growing softer and more intimate. Freya and Catherine eventually joined Asher at a quieter corner of the hall. Freya rested her head on his shoulder, her usual sharp demeanor replaced by a rare moment of vulnerability. "It's weird to think this is it. After tonight, everything changes." Catherine nodded, her expression pensive. "We'll all go our separate ways. The outposts, the war. Who knows when we'll see each other again." Asher's gaze hardened slightly, his calm demeanor masking the weight of their words. "We'll meet again," he said firmly. "No matter what happens, we'll find each other." Freya looked up at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "You always make it sound so simple." "It's not," Asher admitted. "But I've learned that the hardest things are usually the ones worth fighting for." For a moment, the three of them sat in comfortable silence, the distant hum of the party fading into the background. The weight of the future hung over them, but for now, they found solace in each other's presence. Asher glanced at his watch. The night was almost over. Tomorrow, everything would change, but he wouldn't let himself dwell on that just yet. Standing, he extended a hand to both Freya and Catherine.
"Come on.
One last dance before the night ends." Freya raised an eyebrow, smirking. Now you're starting to sound like me. Catherine laughed softly, taking his hand. Let's make it a dance to remember. The music slowed to a gentle, almost nostalgic tune, signaling the night's final dance. The remaining students gathered on the dance floor, their laughter softening to murmurs as they paired off or swayed with friends. The mood had shifted, the earlier excitement replaced by bittersweet acceptance that this was the end of their shared journey at the academy. Asher stood with Freya and Catherine on either side, each holding one of his hands. Freya, ever confident, stepped forward first, pulling him into a slow dance. Her fiery energy seemed tempered now, her emerald eyes searching his face for something unspoken. "Thank you for being you," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "I know I give you a hard time, but you're someone I trust completely, Asher. No matter what happens out there, I hope you'll trust me too." Asher met her gaze, his own expression softening. "You've always had my trust, Freya. You know that." Her lips quirked into a small, genuine smile, and she rested her head briefly against his chest before stepping back. Catherine stepped forward then, her movements graceful and deliberate, her sapphire blue dress flowing like water around her. She placed her hand on his shoulder, and they swayed to the rhythm of the music. "You've surprised me, you know," she said, her voice carrying a melodic lilt. "You act like you're detached from all of this, but I think you care more than you let on." Asher tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "What makes you think that?" She smiled softly, her gaze meeting his. "You stayed. You danced. You let yourself be part of this night. That says more than words ever could." He didn't reply immediately, but the faintest trace of a smile crossed his lips. "Maybe you're right." The song began to fade, and the students on the dance floor stilled, holding on to their final moments together. Freya and Catherine stood by Asher's side once more, their presence grounding him as he glanced around the room. "This is it," Freya murmured, her voice tinged with reluctant acceptance. "No turning back now." "No," Asher agreed, his voice firm yet calm. "But we're ready." The lights dimmed, and the headmaster stepped onto the stage at the front of the room. His commanding presence silenced the murmurs, and every eye turned to him. "Students," he began, his deep voice resonating across the hall. "Tonight marks the end of your time at the academy, but it is also the beginning of something far greater. You are the future, our hope in a world that desperately needs it." He paused, his gaze sweeping over them. "Remember this night. Remember the bonds you've forged and the strength you've gained. Out there, you will face trials that will test you in ways you cannot imagine. But I have no doubt that you will rise to meet them." The headmaster raised his glass in a toast. "To all of you, to the next generation of warriors, leaders, and heroes. May you forge your own legends." The students raised their glasses in unison, cheers ringing out one last time. Asher stood between Freya and Catherine, his own glass lifted high. In this moment, he felt the weight of the headmaster's words, a promise of the challenges and triumphs yet to come. Asher now stood in front of the gates of the academy, alongside the other students. They were all preparing to leave, taking one last look at the World Academy that had been their home for so many years. The commoners and students from smaller families moved through the communal portals, which led to various cities and regions. Meanwhile, the students from supreme families headed toward their own exclusive portals, which led to hidden sanctuaries known only to their kin. Asher glanced at Freya as she approached the portal designated for her family. She turned to him, her usual confidence replaced by a trace of vulnerability. "I guess this is goodbye, for now," she said softly. Asher nodded, his expression calm but his mind racing. "Will you miss me?" she asked, her voice teasing but her eyes betraying a hint of genuine curiosity. Asher hesitated for a moment, caught in an internal struggle. Finally, he sighed and stepped closer. Without a word, he placed his hands on her waist in a swift, confident motion and leaned in, pressing his lips to hers. Freya's eyes widened in surprise before she melted into the kiss, her usual sharp demeanor softening. Around them, some of the other students gasped or looked away awkwardly, while a few began cheering. In the commotion, it seemed that others were also sharing similar moments, while some lone students rolled their eyes or muttered to themselves. After a few moments, Asher broke the kiss, his forehead resting lightly against hers as he whispered into her ear, "You're mine." Freya blinked, her cheeks flushed, before a smirk curved her lips. "You'd better mean that," she replied, her voice low and full of emotion. Asher stepped back, a faint smile on his face as he turned toward the Magnus family portal. Without another word, he began to walk away, leaving Freya standing at her portal, watching him with a mix of surprise, amusement, and longing. As he disappeared into the crowd, Freya touched her lips, a small, genuine smile spreading across her face. "Guess I'll have to make sure he keeps that promise," she murmured, stepping into her family's portal and vanishing into the light. As Asher approached the portal, the guards stationed there straightened at the sight of him. They exchanged quick glances before one of them respectfully stepped aside, allowing him access. Without a word, Asher stepped through the shimmering light of the Magnus family portal, instantly transported to the floating city of Theres. The air was crisp and cool, carrying a faint energy hum unique to the city that hovered above the clouds. Asher took a deep breath, the sensation both comforting and invigorating.
It felt like home.
"Welcome back, young master," a familiar voice greeted him. Emily, his family's trusted steward, stood waiting for him at the portal's exit. She offered a polite bow, her sharp eyes briefly scanning him for any signs of exhaustion or injury. "You've outdone yourself again," she said, a hint of pride in her tone. 12 years at the top rank, an achievement even among the Magnus family.
It's a rare feat.
Asher gave her a small nod of acknowledgement, his usual reserved demeanor in place. "It's good to be back," he replied, his gaze shifting to the magnificent skyline of Theres. The city shimmered in the distance, its towering structures almost blending into the sky. The very air seemed alive, practically liquefied with concentrated mana. Asher couldn't help but close his eyes briefly, letting the energy seep into him. Emily stepped forward, her composed expression softening just slightly. "I've prepared a feast to celebrate your return," she informed him. "The entire household has been looking forward to your arrival." "Thank you," Asher said, his voice steady but warm. He appreciated her efforts, even if he rarely voiced it aloud. As he followed her toward the Grand Magnus estate, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and anticipation. Asher walked with Emily toward his quarters, his footsteps steady and composed. However, his pace slowed as his sharp eyes caught sight of a woman standing in front of his gates. She had long silver hair cascading like silk, and piercing crimson eyes that seemed to hold no emotion, her face an unreadable mask, almost mechanical in its lack of expression. Asher's gaze softened, and he inclined his head slightly in respect. "Mother," he greeted, his tone formal but restrained. It had been 12 years since he'd last seen her in person. In that time, their interactions had been limited to brief messages, always centered around resources, achievements, or inquiries about his progress. She would check in, coldly efficient, ensuring he was meeting the family's expectations and leaving no room for sentimentality. His mother said nothing at first, stepping forward in complete silence. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch light yet assessing. Asher felt the faint pulse of her mana scanning his body, checking for any signs of weakness or injury. "Good," she finally said, her voice as emotionless as her expression. Without another word, she turned on her heel, beginning to walk away. Over her shoulder, she added in the same flat tone, "Continue working hard." Asher stood still, watching her retreating figure until it vanished from view. He let out a faint sigh, his expression remaining calm, though a flicker of something unspoken passed through his eyes. For years, he had sought her acknowledgement, working tirelessly to prove himself. But now, after everything he had experienced at the academy, after finding people like Freya who saw and supported him as more than just the heir to the Magnus name, he realized something had shifted within him. Her approval no longer felt like the cornerstone of his purpose. Turning back to Emily, he gave a small nod. "Let's continue," he said quietly, resuming his steps toward his quarters. As he entered his room, the familiar yet distant scent of home surrounded him. He settled into the space, his thoughts momentarily drifting to the people who had shaped his path at the academy. Freya's warm smiles, her unwavering support, even her teasing words, lingered in his mind far more than his mother's cold indifference. Perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, the approval he had once craved was no longer essential. Back at home, the atmosphere was surprisingly subdued. It wasn't the grand celebration one might expect after Asher's accomplishments at the academy. Instead, it was a simple family dinner, a rare occasion for the Magnus family. Though modest by their standards, the presence of the younger generation participating in such an event marked a notable gesture of unity, something almost unheard of in their cold, pragmatic household. Asher sat at the long dining table, surrounded by roughly 20 others of his age group, all of whom were now preparing to step into the wider world to serve the Magnus family and its interests. Each of them bore the same determined expression, aware of the weight of responsibility placed upon their shoulders. When the dinner concluded, everyone was gathered in the grand hall of Magnus Manor. The air was heavy with anticipation as one of the elders stepped forward, his imposing presence commanding immediate attention. He raised a hand to quiet the murmurs, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "You all are the finest this generation has produced," the elder began, his sharp gaze sweeping across the assembled group. "Your time at the academy has honed your skills, and now, you stand as the pride of the Magnus family. The tasks before you are great, but so are the expectations. The world awaits your contributions, and it is through your actions that the Magnus name will continue to dominate. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. That is why each of you will travel under the guidance of your assigned guardians. Your safety and progress are of paramount importance. Asher let out a quiet breath, already anticipating his assigned companion. As expected, the elder turned to him and continued, Asher Magnus, you will be accompanied by Emily, your guardian and caretaker. She will serve not only as your protector but also as your advisor. Emily, who stood a few steps behind Asher, inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement. It is an honor, she said softly. Asher nodded, keeping his expression calm. While others might have viewed having a guardian as a constraint, he trusted Emily. Her unwavering loyalty and efficiency had proven invaluable many times before. The elder concluded his speech with a final directive: prepare yourselves. The journey ahead will not be easy, but it will define your place in this family and in the world.
Dismissed.
As the gathering dispersed, Asher lingered for a moment, his thoughts already focused on the challenges awaiting him. The quiet dinner and formal send-off marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. With Emily at his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Shall we prepare for departure, young master? Emily asked, breaking his reverie. Asher nodded, his resolve firm.
Yes. Let's begin.
The following morning, Asher stood at the gates of Magnus Manor, the crisp air signaling the dawn of a new chapter. Around him, the other young graduates were preparing to leave, their guardians and escorts ensuring everything was in order. The scene was a mix of quiet determination and nervous energy, as each individual contemplated the unknown challenges ahead. Find your next read at my virtual library empire. Emily stood beside Asher, her posture as composed as ever. She carried herself with the grace and precision of someone who had long served the Magnus family, her presence a reassuring constant in his life. Your travel itinerary is ready, young master, Emily said, handing him a sleek tablet containing the details. We'll be heading to the Magnus outpost in the northern region. It's a strategic point overseeing the borders of hostile territories. Your first assignment will be to assist in managing defenses and establishing better coordination between the outpost and the central command. Asher glanced over the details, noting the complexity of the assignment. It wasn't unexpected. His family never eased anyone into their responsibilities. Every task was a test, and failure was not an option. I see, he replied calmly, swiping through the information. It's as they say, no rest for the worthy. Emily allowed herself a faint smile.
Indeed.
But I have no doubt you'll excel, as always. Asher adjusted the strap of his travel pack and looked around one last time. Many of his peers were already stepping through their respective portals or boarding transport vehicles. Some exchanged words of encouragement with their guardians, while others maintained stoic silence. Young master, Emily prompted gently. Asher turned back to her and nodded.
Let's go.
The portal shimmered before them, its surface rippling like liquid light. Asher stepped forward, his expression calm but his mind racing with thoughts of the mission ahead. He had spent 12 years preparing for this moment, and now it was time to prove himself on a battlefield that extended beyond the controlled environment of the academy. As they passed through the portal, Asher felt a brief sensation of weightlessness before the world shifted around him. The scenery on the other side was starkly different. Rolling hills covered in frost, the sky painted in muted grays as a cold wind swept through the air. The Magnus outpost loomed in the distance, a fortress of steel and stone surrounded by layers of defensive wards. Soldiers and mages bustled about, their movements efficient and purposeful. Emily adjusted her coat against the chill and glanced at Asher. Welcome to the northern outpost, young master. This will be your new base of operations for the foreseeable future. Asher took in the sight, his sharp eyes noting every detail, the layout of the defenses, the flow of activity, the tension etched into the faces of those stationed there. He could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on him, but he welcomed it. This is where it begins, he murmured to himself, his voice steady. Emily looked at him, her expression unreadable. Shall we proceed to meet the commanding officer? Asher nodded, his resolve unwavering. Lead the way. With that, the two of them set off toward the outpost, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. As Asher and Emily approached the outpost gates, the guards straightened their posture, clearly aware of who he was. The Magnus insignia on his travel pack was enough to send ripples of attention through the ranks. The towering gates opened with a resonant hum, revealing the bustling activity within. Inside, the outpost was a hub of strategic operations. Soldiers trained in designated zones, mages reinforced the protective wards, and officers barked orders to ensure the smooth execution of tasks. The air buzzed with tension and discipline, the weight of constant vigilance against the looming threats from the hostile worlds evident in every movement. A man in ornate armor, marked by scars and a hardened demeanor, strode toward them with purposeful steps. His piercing gaze landed on Asher, taking in his calm composure and youthful appearance. Despite his age, Asher's reputation had clearly preceded him. "Young Master Asher," the man said, bowing slightly out of respect. "I am Commander Relan, in charge of this outpost. It is an honor to have you here." Asher returned the bow with a slight nod, exuding the poise expected of someone from the Magnus family. "Commander Relan, I look forward to working with you. I trust you'll provide a full briefing on the current situation." "Of course," Relan replied, gesturing for them to follow. "If you'll come with me, I'll take you to the strategy room. We've prepared a detailed report on the recent incursions and our current defensive strategy." As they walked through the outpost, Asher observed everything with a critical eye. The defenses were solid, but he noticed inefficiencies in the troop rotations and gaps in the patrol patterns. He made mental notes, intending to address these issues later. The strategy room was a large chamber filled with holographic maps and projection screens displaying real-time data. Officers stood around a central table, discussing plans with focused intensity. When Asher entered, the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward him. "This is young Master Asher Magnus," Relan announced. "He'll be overseeing operations here as part of his assignment. Treat his words as you would my own." Asher stepped forward, his voice steady but commanding.
"Thank you, Commander."
"I've been briefed on the basics, but I'll need an in-depth understanding of the threats we're facing and the resources at our disposal. Let's begin with an overview of the enemy activity." One of the officers stepped forward, activating a holographic display of the surrounding region. Red markers lit up across the map, indicating enemy movements and skirmish sites. "The incursions from the hostile worlds have increased in frequency," the officer explained. "The two invading factions are relentless in their attempts to dominate each other and us. They've begun targeting our supply lines and attempting to disrupt our warding structures. Continue your journey on my virtual library empire." Asher studied the map intently, his sharp mind already formulating strategies. "And what about our countermeasures? Have we managed to establish a foothold in any of their territories?" Relan sighed, his expression grim.
"Not yet.
"We've been focusing on fortifying our defenses and minimizing losses. Offensive operations into their worlds require resources and coordination we currently lack."
Asher's gaze hardened. "That's unacceptable.
"If we remain on the defensive, they'll eventually overwhelm us. We need to shift the balance of power in our favor." Relan hesitated for a moment before nodding. "What do you propose, young master?" Asher straightened, his presence commanding. "First, I'll need access to all intelligence reports and a detailed inventory of our resources. Once I've reviewed them, I'll draft a strategy to secure our position and begin probing their territories for weaknesses. We cannot afford to sit idle while they gain ground." The officers exchanged glances, their initial skepticism giving way to respect for Asher's decisiveness. Relan inclined his head.
"Very well.
I'll ensure you have everything you need." Emily, who had been silently observing, stepped closer to Asher. "Young master, I'll arrange for the reports to be delivered to your quarters immediately." Asher nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips.
"Good. Let's get to work.
Time is not on our side." With that, the room erupted into motion as officers and aides scrambled to fulfill Asher's directives. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but Asher carried it with ease, his mind already racing ahead to the battles yet to come. Asher spent the next several hours buried in reports and intelligence briefings in his quarters. Emily, ever efficient, ensured that every document was organized and cross-referenced, leaving him free to focus entirely on crafting a strategy. The outpost's intelligence revealed patterns in the incursions. Enemy movements followed a predictable rhythm, likely tied to their resource cycles. This gave Asher the opening he needed to plan a counterattack. When he emerged from his quarters, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting the outpost in the dim glow of enchanted lights. He headed straight to the command center, where Commander Relan and the other officers awaited his input. "Young master," Relan greeted, rising from his chair.
"Do you have a plan?"
Asher stepped to the central table, activating the holographic map. He adjusted the projection, highlighting key locations. The enemy's movements suggest they rely heavily on a series of supply depots located within their territory. If we can disrupt these points, their incursions will weaken significantly. He pointed to a cluster of red markers near the border of one of the invading worlds. This depot is their most critical. Destroying it will destabilize their operations in this region. One of the officers frowned. That's deep in enemy territory. We don't have the resources to mount a large-scale assault.
We won't need one, Asher replied, his tone confident. This will be a precision strike.
A small, elite team can infiltrate the area, destroy the depot, and retreat before the enemy has time to respond. Rillen's brow furrowed.
A bold plan.
But who will lead this team?
I will, Asher said without hesitation.
His words left no room for argument. The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Finally, Rillen nodded. If anyone can pull this off, it's you, young master. I'll assemble a team of our best operatives to accompany you.
Asher glanced at Emily, who stood silently at his side.
Emily will come with me. Her abilities are invaluable in an operation like this.
Emily inclined her head.
Of course, young master. The invaders or the competitors in the vast expanse of space are two planets. They are Kumtas and Nagukar, each with its own specialty. However, one thing they share is that both planets are ruled by a single dominant species. On the Nagukar planet, governance lies in the hands of the Kyrians, a formidable four-armed race. Kyrians possess immense strength, and every member of their species is born with a single elemental affinity, which they master to extraordinary levels. Their society revolves around this elemental prowess, with each Kyrian honing their abilities from a young age. In contrast, the Kumtas planet is primarily dominated by the Métis race. The Métis are humanoid but far more advanced compared to Earth's humans. Each Métis individual is born with a unique innate ability, often tied to illusion or transformation. These powers, combined with their superior intellect and technological advancements, make them a force to be reckoned with. Both races are incredibly different, yet their mastery over their respective specialties places them among the most powerful forces in the galaxy. In the vast expanse of space, the planets Nagukar and Kumtas are the closest to Volorisa, a thriving hub world. This proximity has fostered intense competition among these three worlds, as each strives for dominance in trade, resources, and influence. There was once a fourth planet in this region, but it was long ago conquered by the Kumtas. This lost planet served as a beacon of hope and refuge for numerous displaced races, such as the Bestman and others. Fleeing the rule of the Kumtas, these races sought shelter on Volorisa, creating a melting pot of cultures and tensions as they tried to rebuild their lives far from their conquer homeland. The history of this conquest and the resulting migration continues to shape the dynamics of the region. While Nagukar and Kumtas vie for supremacy, Volorisa's diverse population, bolstered by its influx of refugees, has given it an edge as a powerful neutral ground in this galactic rivalry. Enjoy new adventures from my virtual library empire. At the outpost, preparations for the mission were in full swing under Rillen's command. Orders were issued, and the area buzzed with focused activity as every member of the team prepared for the challenges ahead. Meanwhile, Asher withdrew to the training grounds, determined to hone his skills for the critical task. As he practiced, his thoughts drifted momentarily to the academy and the friends he'd left behind. Memories of Freya surfaced, especially their final kiss. A faint smile crossed his face before it vanished as he pushed the sentiment aside. There was no time for distraction now, only the mission mattered. By nightfall, the squad gathered at the teleportation circle, their lightweight combat gear glinting faintly in the dim light. The outpost was eerily silent, the weight of what lay ahead pressing on them. Rillen stood nearby, his voice steady as he offered his parting words.
Good luck, young master.
May the stars guide your way. Asher stepped forward, his confidence unwavering. We'll return victorious, he replied, his tone resolute. In a blinding flash of light, the team disappeared, leaving the safety of the outpost behind. They materialized in a dense, alien forest, its oppressive atmosphere thick with the unfamiliar energy of an enemy world.
The mission had begun.
Asher raised a hand, signaling the group to move silently through the undergrowth. The forest was alive with strange noises, and every shadow seemed to conceal a threat. Yet, Asher felt no fear, only a sharp, focused determination. Their target was the Métis outpost, a vital stronghold governed by the powerful Métis race. The invaders they faced were known for their insatiable greed and ruthless tactics, claiming dominance over resources and territories wherever they went. To them, the vast expanse of space was theirs to conquer by right. This relentless ambition was the very force that had crushed the Beastman race, subjugating their world and reducing its inhabitants to refugees. Many had fled to Volorisa, a haven of unity and resilience, but now the invaders had set their sights on it, a thriving world of diverse cultures and displaced peoples. The looming battle for Volorisa carried enormous stakes. For its defenders, this fight was not merely about survival but about preserving their freedom and defying the forces that sought to claim the galaxy for themselves. The dense forest offered both cover and challenges as Asher and his squad advanced cautiously. Every step was measured, every sound scrutinized, as they moved deeper into enemy territory. The faint hum of distant machinery indicated they were closing in on the Métis outpost. Asher gestured for the team to halt and crouched low, scanning their surroundings. His eyes, sharpened by years of training and natural aptitude, picked out faint trails, evidence of recent Métis patrols. He motioned silently, directing his team to split into smaller groups to encircle the area. Emily, ever vigilant, stayed at his side. She whispered, "Their defenses are likely layered. The Métis wouldn't leave such a crucial outpost vulnerable."
Asher nodded. Agreed. Stay sharp.
"We'll scout their perimeter first before making any moves." The squad spread out, their stealth training paying off as they melted into the shadows of the forest. Asher and Emily moved along a narrow path, their senses on high alert. Soon, they came upon a vantage point overlooking the Métis outpost. The structure was a blend of organic and mechanical design, its metallic walls glimmering faintly under artificial lights. Defensive turrets and sentry drones patrolled the perimeter, while holographic barriers shimmered intermittently, revealing the strength of their technological superiority. Emily analyzed the scene, her voice low but steady. "The turrets are on automated cycles. If we time it right, we can slip past. But the drones are unpredictable." Asher considered her words. "We'll need a distraction. Have one team draw their attention while another disables the drones. Once the defenses are down, we move in quickly." The plan was relayed through hand signals and quiet whispers. The squad executed their roles with precision. A small team triggered a disturbance near the far edge of the outpost, drawing the turrets and drones away momentarily. Meanwhile, another team worked swiftly to disable the drones, using EMP charges to neutralize their circuits. As the defenses faltered, Asher led the charge, his squad breaching the perimeter with practiced efficiency. The first wave of Métis soldiers, alerted by the disruption, emerged to confront them. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They moved with unnatural speed and coordination, their illusionary abilities creating confusion on the battlefield. Asher's voice cut through the chaos. "Focus on their real forms. The illusions are distractions." Asher stepped out of Director Yulia's office only to be met by a wall of hushed whispers. A crowd had gathered, students loitering near the corridor, eyes wide, voices low. At the center stood a tall figure with long electric blue hair that shimmered under the artificial lights. His presence alone drew focus like gravity. "Magnus," the figure called, voice calm, laced with a razor-sharp edge. "Who'd you bribe this time to climb that high?" Asher stopped, brow raised. "Still bitter I passed you up, Oris?"
Oris Lyron.
The prodigy of the Lightborn family. Heir to a legacy of revered healers, yet cursed or blessed, with a different kind of power. His vidlight didn't mend bones or close wounds like his kin's. No, Oris burned through flesh and soul alike.
A predator among priests.
He stepped forward, his piercing azure eyes locked on Asher. "No one just appears at the top of the special rankings. Especially not you. What did you do?" "Still figuring that out myself," Asher said, slipping his hands into his coat pockets. "Apparently, talent is harder to fake than you'd think."
Cute. Oris smirked.
"You always did have a mouth on you. And you've always had a stick up your—" A few chuckles from the crowd interrupted them. Even Oris grinned, albeit thinly. "Careful, Magnus. You're attracting attention," Oris said, his tone suddenly grave. "Not all of it friendly."
Asher shrugged.
"If someone's watching, let them. I'm not hiding." "You should," Oris replied, stepping aside. "The higher you climb, the more people want to see you fall." Asher gave a lopsided grin. "Then they'll just have to climb after me." Oris didn't answer. He turned to walk away, but tossed one last comment over his shoulder. "Even the brightest flame burns out fast." "And yet," Asher said, his voice carrying effortlessly, "those are the ones they remember." Oris chuckled as he vanished into the crowd. The students dispersed, the weight of the moment fading, until a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Hey, troublemaker." Asher turned, smile tugging at his lips.
"Freya."
Freya strode toward him, her crimson hair catching the light like fire, green eyes sharp with barely contained amusement. She stopped in front of him, arms crossed, expression somewhere between fondness and frustration.
"Seriously," she said.
"Can you do anything without turning the entire academy upside down?" He gave a mock-innocent shrug. "I just climbed a tower. Quietly, I might add." "You accidentally climbed to the top of the special leaderboard, soloed a floor boss using only sword aura, and you're calling that quiet?
Didn't tell anyone, did I?
She sighed, rolling her eyes. Honestly, I should start charging for every time I have to clean up after your mess.
Asher grinned. You love it.
No, I tolerate it, she said, though the corners of her mouth betrayed a smile. Seriously though, you okay? You look like you've been through hell.
He gave a nod. Still processing.
Freya took a step closer. Everyone's saying you ticked every box. Sword aura mastery, no artifacts, no backup. Just raw skill. Is it true?
Some of it, Asher admitted.
I didn't use anything but my sword. But there are other students who could have done the same. I'm not special.
Not special.
Freya raised a brow. You're a battle mage, Asher. You reached floor 200 relying solely on aura and swordplay. That's beyond rare, it's borderline insane. Asher scratched the back of his head. Wasn't aiming to make a scene. Just wanted to push myself. And that, she said with a soft smile, is what makes you infuriating. You don't even realize how far ahead you are. He offered a half smile. If I start listing my titles, should I add infuriating to the top? I swear, Freya muttered with a laugh.
Come on.
Let's get you some food before you collapse. I bet you haven't eaten in hours. Maybe days, he replied, falling in step beside her. They walked through the academy courtyard, past fountains and glimmering archways, under the ever-watching eyes of enchanted lamps and spellbound security glyphs. Whispers followed them, students murmuring, pointing, wondering. I wonder how long this buzz will last, Asher muttered, keeping his gaze ahead. Freya walked beside him like a storm wrapped in velvet, confident and composed.
A few days, maybe.
But some of them? They're already planning to chase your footsteps. Let me guess, swordsman, he said dryly.
Freya nodded.
Now that people know raw focus and minimalism earn greater rewards, everyone wants to be the next Asher Magnus. He gave a tired laugh. Good luck to them. Freya glanced sideways at him. You really don't like the attention, do you?
No, he said honestly.
I didn't climb to be remembered. I climbed because I had to.
She didn't press further.
She simply reached out and gently bumped his shoulder with hers. Then let's make sure you're not climbing alone next time. Asher looked at her, a real smile cracking through.
Deal.
Stay focused, Emily advised, her voice steady and authoritative. This isn't over yet. Asher nodded, stepping forward with deliberate calm. His gaze was fixed on the direction of the roar, anticipation gleaming in his eyes. Whatever was coming, he was ready to face it. A swirling portal materialized before them, its energy crackling ominously in the air. Asher froze mid-step, an uncharacteristic stillness overtaking him. The others in his squad were similarly paralyzed, their movements halted before they could react. Even before the figure emerged, the sheer presence emanating from the portal was suffocating. Asher instinctively gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on his weapon as he attempted to break free of the invisible force binding him. Just as he was about to push himself further, Emily placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Leave it, young master, she said calmly, though her voice carried a rare edge of caution. This is a being far beyond your current strength. Resistance is futile. Her words sent a chill down Asher's spine, but he trusted her judgment implicitly. Slowly, he relaxed his tense posture, though his eyes never left the portal. The air around them grew heavier, the oppressive aura intensifying as the entity began to take form. From the swirling depths of the portal stepped a figure cloaked in shadow, their presence dominating the battlefield. It was clear this was no ordinary opponent, but something far more powerful, and far more dangerous. No wonder I felt the presence of the Magnus blood around here, the being said, his voice deep and resonant as he pulled back his cloak, revealing his towering form. He stood at nearly twice Asher's size, his skin unlike anything human, etched with black tattoos that seemed alive, slithering and shifting like snakes across his body. His eyes were an endless pitch black, their gaze piercing straight into Asher's soul. You Métis dog, the being growled, his tone laced with disdain. Are you forgetting the treaty? No higher ranks are allowed to interfere with beings more than 3 levels below them. The words hung heavy in the air, directed toward the Métis invaders who had dared to summon such a formidable presence. The Métis warrior nearest to the being stammered nervously. Before they could respond, the towering figure dismissed them with a scoff, turning his full attention to Asher and his group. I know the rules, the being said, his lips curling into a wicked smile. And I am not here to break them. His voice dripped with mockery. My name is Tur. And you, human female, what is your name? His gaze shifted to Emily, his tone dripping with amusement and condescension. Emily met his eyes unflinchingly, her voice calm and steady. "Emily," she replied simply. "Ah, Emily," Ter drawled, as if savoring her name. "I've only brought E and D ranks with me. I've come simply to observe. I assure you, I am here only to ensure that no misunderstandings occur." His grin widened, revealing sharp, unervingly white teeth. Behind Ter, 5 figures emerged from the portal, their appearances exuding a menacing aura. They were clearly Métis warriors of E and D ranks, standing silently in deference to the towering figure. Ter gestured lazily to the newcomers. "These are my subordinates," he said, as if introducing a mere formality. His eyes returned to Asher, lingering on him for a moment longer. "And you must be the leader of this little group," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "The one they call Young Master, yes?" The Métis warriors glanced at Asher and his team, their expressions filled with contempt. To them, Asher and his allies were insignificant, mere obstacles in their path. "I am just here to observe how my elites fare against the elites of the Magnus household," Ter said, his tone dripping with mock amusement. With a casual motion, he reclined mid-air, as if seated on an invisible throne, his posture radiating careless arrogance. Emily glanced at him briefly, her expression unreadable, before stepping back, signaling Asher and the others to handle the incoming enemies. Her calm demeanor conveyed confidence in their abilities, even in the face of this unexpected challenge. "Continue your saga on my virtual library empire." Asher's blood pulsed with anticipation. He raised his scythe, its crimson glow intensifying as he faced the Métis warriors now standing before him. The enemies bore the distinct insignias of their ranks, E and D class warriors, each exuding an aura of practiced combat readiness. "Stay sharp," Asher instructed his team, his voice firm and focused. "These are no ordinary opponents." The Métis warriors spread out, their movements calculated and synchronized. Each one exuded the signature aura of their race, a mix of illusions and raw combat proficiency. The air crackled with tension as the battlefield fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional hum of energy weapons and the rustle of armor. Ter watched the unfolding standoff with a bemused smile, his black eyes scanning the field with predatory interest. "Let's see if you're worth the reputation, Magnus Heir," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. The tension in the air was palpable as the Métis warriors advanced. Asher stepped forward, his crimson scythe gleaming under the faint light of the outpost's broken lamps. His team spread out behind him, forming a defensive line to counter the incoming foes. The first Métis warrior charged, moving with blinding speed. It was a feint. The moment Asher adjusted his stance, an illusion shimmered into view, a duplicate of the attacker lunging from the opposite direction. Asher smirked, pivoting on his heel and slicing through both the illusion and the real attacker in one fluid motion. The illusion dissipated, but the Métis warrior stumbled, clutching a deep wound on his side before collapsing.
"Focus," Asher barked at his team.
"They'll use illusions to confuse you. Look for patterns, they can't hide their intent entirely."
The battle erupted into chaos.
Emily stood to the side, arms crossed, observing with a faint smile. Though she was there to ensure Asher's safety, she allowed him the opportunity to prove himself. This was his fight, and she trusted his instincts.